Li Yuan. The millet jar is almost empty. Zhao Yun seemed to hear a woman's voice drifting over from the surface of the sea. It sounded distant and ethereal, tinged with a hint of mystery. Yet, all he could truly catch was the rumble of the ocean depths in his ears. He drifted upward, as if guided by that voice, his soul seemingly being pulled up to the water's surface. Then, as he broke through, a deluge of memories came bubbling up along with him. He remembered drinking at a class reunion. Many of his former classmates had made a life for themselves, climbing up the ladder of success, achieving milestone after milestone. Yet he had ended up as a butcher, carving up pigs for a living. Certainly a fall from grace for the old class president. So he chose to ignore reality by drowning his disappointment with booze. He kept his head low and gulped down glass after glass after glass, until everything went black. You know, if you don't go out hunting soon, we'll starve. Hardly anyone in the village needs any writing done lately, so I haven't earned anything. I'm sorry. The woman's voice returned, prodding at his consciousness. Li Yuan? Who's that? Who's she calling? Zhao Yun's curiosity was piqued. Then, as if to answer his questions, a second deluge of memories, ones that did not belong to him, flooded into his mind. Within a matter of moments, he had lived another man's life, or rather recalled his own. He wasn't sure how or why, but it appeared he'd transmigrated, becoming another person entirely. The person the woman was calling for was him. He was Li Yuan, a hunter in Gemhill County. He hunted because his family owned a special permit, once issued by a former county magistrate. 3 years ago, a plague had ravaged Gemhill County. Li Yuan's parents did not survive, leaving him behind. Life had to go on, so he took up a bow and ventured into the mountains to hunt. He knew little else. As for the woman, she'd been left in his care by an old friend who'd gone off on a journey. This friend had a certain roguish charm and a heroic air, reminiscent of a wanderer from the Jianghu. Li Yuan admired that friend, and in their drinking days they often spoke of brotherhood and loyalty. Yet 2 years had passed since that friend departed, never to return. Li Yuan now realized the friend hadn't just left her behind. He'd entrusted her to him. Her name was Yenyu, and she turned 20 years old this year. She was pretty in a delicate way, though a bit frail and thin from poor nutrition. She dressed like the average village girl, a blue blouse with white flowers, and snug black pants that clung warmly to long, slender legs. She had a certain charm that could tug at a man's heart, especially when she stood out in an open field on a clear, sunny day. Yenyu could write, so she earned a few coppers by drafting letters for villagers. When Li Yuan went hunting, she kept their home spotless, washing clothes and cooking without complaint. Earlier in the year, just as winter was setting in, Li Yuan had ventured out hunting and was nearly run over by a wild boar. He barely made it home alive, only to fall seriously ill afterward. He was finally feeling a bit better today, but the moment he tried to stand up, the world spun, and he collapsed. Then Zhao Yun crossed over. Like that, everything fit neatly into place. Still, Zhao Yun needed a moment to gain his bearings. He forced his eyes open and focused on the petite and delicate village girl standing before him. She was actually 3 years older than him, so he usually called her big sister. "Are you all right? How about today you just rest a bit longer too? I can go next door to Auntie Wang's place and see if we can borrow some millet. If not millet, maybe some beans," Yenyu said. No, I'm fine. I'll go hunting today. If I catch something, we won't need to owe any favors." Zhao Yun, or rather, Li Yuan shook his head and took a deep breath. Since he'd arrived in a new world, he might as well get out and investigate it for himself. "All right, just be careful. It's the dead of winter now, and the mountain has hardly any game. The beasts still roaming around are all tough, thick-hided creatures fattened up for the cold. They can be fierce," Yenyu said, her brows knit into a delicate frown as she observed his condition. After all, Li Yuan was the only man Yenyu could rely on. Li Yuan said nothing more. He quietly took down his hunting bow from the wall and grabbed the worn quiver beside it and a small pouch. He had only 5 arrows left, their tips painstakingly sharpened. He'd lost the other 10 while fleeing the wild boar. Still, 5 arrows were better than nothing. The pouch carried 20 smooth stones, perfect for slinging and taking down smaller prey without damaging their fur, which he could sell later for a better price. He pushed open the door. Outside, a tether hung limply in the wind, an empty collar swinging at its end. He used to have a loyal hunting dog, but just this past autumn, the dog had died protecting him, struck down by a rampaging black bear in the mountains. Without that old yellow-furred mutt, he had no one to warn him of nearby danger. That was partially why he'd gotten caught off guard by that wild boar. The tether swayed desolately, tapping against the wooden cabin with a soft plap-plap. Survive, Li Yuan told himself under his breath. He tore his gaze away, picked up a hatchet leaning against the wall and slipped it into his belt, then grabbed a pitchfork he used for hunting. Then, he looked out at the distant mountain path before setting out. As Li Yuan walked, he surveyed the surroundings. His home stood at the foot of Little Ink Mountain. The area wasn't exactly a slum, but it was only a step above one. His one desire now was to improve his skills, earn more money, find the right moment to formally propose to Yenyu, and move to Silver Creek, a place with far better security than these parts. If he wanted to move to Silver Creek, he needed connections. Since he didn't have connections, he needed money. Unfortunately, his hunting skills weren't all that great. Saving up enough silver would be hard. Li Yuan exhaled a weary breath, trying to clear his mind. Following the instincts he'd inherited with his new memories, he scanned his surroundings as he climbed into the mountains. Beyond a certain ridge and into the gorge, the true wilderness began. Shadows stretched across the mountainsides, and before long the sun shifted west. By dusk, Li Yuan returned home utterly exhausted and empty-handed. He hadn't caught a damn thing. Wildlife was scarce in the winter, especially near human settlements. He'd only encountered that wild boar after he'd pushed deep into the second ridge of the mountain. Today, though, he hadn't dared venture that far. Inside, Yenyu saw him return with nothing to show and said nothing. Instead, she hurried over to a copper mirror, scooped some wood ash from a basin, and smeared it evenly over her face. Turning to him, she asked, "Do you think this makes me look pitiful enough?" Li Yuan glanced at her. That pretty face was now marred with soot, making her look like a survivor of a house fire or disaster. He nodded and sighed. "I'm really sorry, making you do something like this." Yenyu simply smiled and blinked playfully. "I'll go borrow some millet from Auntie Wang." Then off she went with a bowl in hand. She soon returned, but the bowl held only a mixture of scraps. A few kernels of millet, but mostly husks and bean bits. Husks, the tough outer shells of grain, were barely edible, but you could still force them down when desperate. It had been a bad year for harvest in the county. Shortages made grain expensive, and even husks had gone up in price. "Let me pick out the beans and cook you a bowl of bean porridge," Yenyu offered. "Just cook them all together. We'll share," Li Yuan said. After dinner, Li Yuan lay on the bed. The blankets had been warmed and aired out in the midday sun and felt reasonably comfortable. But underneath the bedding was just a layer of packed straw, which retained little heat. He curled up, trying not to move, hoping to trap any bit of warmth he could. After a long silence, he let out a wry chuckle. Dropped into this strange new world, he found that survival itself was a challenge, even tougher than butchering pigs back home. Still, this wasn't a time to wallow in despair. He could complain all he wanted now, but when morning came, he'd have to find a way forward. How could anyone hunt in the dead of winter? But if he didn't hunt, what else could he do? In these times, even landlords had no shortage of laborers. Even if you wanted someone to exploit you, you'd still find no takers, unless you sold yourself outright. From his memories, Li Yuan had seen firsthand how harsh this world could get. Several families around Little Ink Mountain had quietly sold off their own kin. Some sold daughters or sons, and there were even those who sold their wives. Thinking of it that way, being able to borrow a bit of millet from Auntie Wang was already a small mercy. "Just sleep," Li Yuan told himself, closing his eyes and pushing the grim thoughts aside. He slept until midnight, when a creaking sound at the door startled him awake. Opening his eyes, he saw a familiar figure slipping through the darkness. As it approached, it tugged on his quilt and, blushing fiercely, whispered, I want to be with you tonight." With that, she lifted the covers and climbed right in. Yen Yu, Li Yuan. The atmosphere grew heated and intense. And only deep into the night did the world finally quiet down. Yen Yu lay nestled in Li Yuan's arms, tired yet content. The bedding was now warm and comforting. At dawn, the first ray of sunlight slipped through a crack in the window and fell across Li Yuan's face. He opened his eyes, and suddenly he froze. A line of text flashed before his eyes. "You spent a harmonious night with Yen Yu and gained 5 stat points." Then a status window appeared. Name: Li Yuan. Stat points: 5. Realm: unranked. Techniques: none. Skills: basic archery 6 out of 10. Basic tracking 4 out of 10. Divine ability: eternal youth. Equipment slots: locked. Li Yuan blinked in surprise. 5 stat points and eternal youth? I also have points in basic archery and basic tracking. No way. Once the status window faded from view, Li Yuan noticed some numbers in his vision. They floated beside Yen Yu, displaying the numbers 0-1. He reached out to grab them, but his fingers simply passed through. A thought occurred to him and he glanced at himself. Sure enough, a 0-1 was hovering there too. What is this? Recalling the status window from moments before, he decided to test his theory. Carefully, he tried to move his left arm without waking the woman curled up beside him. Yet the slight movement roused her anyway. Last night had been Yen Yu's first taste of intimacy. She had gone from a girl to a woman. The innocence she once carried had turned into a softer, more alluring maturity. Her almond-shaped eyes looked drowsily at the young man, and she murmured, "Li Yuan, it's early. Stay in bed a bit longer." Yen Yu, about last night. Yen Yu's eyes widened. After a brief pause, she sighed softly. "Yesterday evening, I went to Auntie Wang's to borrow some millet and saw old Lin's son had passed away. He'd been sick for so long with nothing to eat. Of course he'd die. Our family still has a little money left, but once it's gone, I don't know how we'll survive. If it ever gets desperate, I'll clean myself up and put on a decent dress. Then you could sell me to some wealthy family in town if you had to. But before that happens, I wanted to give myself to you. No matter where I end up or if I die, I'll feel at least a little comfort." She buried herself in his arms, trembling shoulders so thin and pale. Choking back tears, she whispered, "I only want to be with you. I don't want anyone else." Holding her tight, Li Yuan said, "I'm going out for a while. If we really can't hold on, we'll use the little money we've got left. I'll figure out the rest somehow." He eased his arm free, slipped on his undershirt and ragged cotton pants, then stepped into his boots. Grabbing the padded jacket from the rack, he heard Yen Yu's gentle voice behind him. "There's still half a bowl of porridge from last night. It's cold, but you should eat it." Li Yuan nodded and went to the table. Quickly, he gulped down some of the porridge. It was cold and coarse, but at least it filled his stomach a little. "I left the other half for you. You should finish it. I'm not going out. I'll just lie here a little longer. I'm not hungry. Just eat it," Li Yuan said, as he slung his hunting bow across his back, tucked a hatchet into his belt, and picked up his 3-pronged pitchfork. Stepping outside, he suddenly stopped short. Turning, he noticed the floating numbers had changed from 0-1 to 1-2. Li Yuan paused, taking a quick look around before slipping outside. He went down the village's main road, carefully observing everyone he passed. Whenever he saw people, a floating number appeared above their heads. Most of them were labeled 0-1. However, if someone was holding a sickle, hoe, or shovel, their number would be 1-2. Some who appeared scrawny or listless still remained at 0-1. Li Yuan halted in his tracks, realization dawning. Sure enough, this was just like the system from a certain game he played in his previous life. There was a status window, a way to add stat points, and these numbers represented a sort of overall combat power. Under normal circumstances, Anyone who hadn't trained in martial arts registered 0-1. If they picked up a weapon, their power fluctuated, pushing the range to 1-2. That said, those with truly poor constitutions could still remain at 0-1 even when armed. Back then, when this game had first launched, many players called it a numbers game. If you saw a monster with lower stats, you attacked. If some unscrupulous players found someone weaker than them out in the wild, they might go after them too. But people quickly realized it wasn't so simple. Soon enough, the game got a new nickname, the shit-baiting Sanuva bitch game. After all, you might think you could beat someone who had 1-2 while you were 3-4, only for them to whip out some magical item and jump straight to 10-20. Such abrupt power surges depended on the equipment slot. If you didn't have one, you couldn't pull off those kinds of stunts. Wait a minute. Li Yuan himself had an equipment slot. It was still locked, but it was definitely there on his status window. And that wasn't even the most important part. He also possessed the ability Eternal Youth. Glancing again at its description, he saw, Eternal Youth. Your lifespan is infinite, and you will always remain at the peak of your youth. You will never die of old age. Now that he'd confirmed it wasn't just an illusion, a rush of genuine elation swept through him. Eternal youth. He was actually immortal. It was the kind of thing people only dreamed about. But he calmed himself. Eternal youth only meant he wouldn't die of old age, not that he couldn't be killed. If he faced real danger without the strength to defend himself, eternal youth would be useless. To make the most of this gift, he needed to avoid drawing attention and steadily build up his power. Li Yuan continued along the road, thinking, if that's how it is, I can't live too boldly. I'll rely on time to accumulate my strength and hidden cards. After all, I've got more than enough time, and if something can be solved just by waiting, then it's no problem at all. Then, he shook his head and glanced down at his still grumbling stomach. First things first. I need to fill my belly and get through the challenge right in front of me. He suddenly stopped and stepped into the old forest beside the road. After walking a short distance where no one could see him, he tried issuing a command in his head, allocate stat points. On his status window, tiny plus symbols appeared beside his 2 skills. He tried adding a single point to basic archery. Basic archery, 6 out of 10. Basic archery, 7 out of 10. Nothing happened. He kept going, adding a total of 3 more points to basic archery. Basic archery, 7 out of 10. New. Intermediate archery, 0/20. An acute sense of familiarity with the bow and arrow washed over him. It was as if he'd been holding a bow day and night for several dozen days, pouring all his concentration into training. He recalled sweating and staying completely focused, gaining that small but significant progress. Yet the memory of fatigue had been lost somewhere along the way, leaving him fresh and unweakened in the present. Li Yuan exhaled in relief. Thank goodness these added points don't drain my energy or vitality. In that case, there's nothing to worry about. With that, he used his last remaining point on basic tracking. Immediately, the status window reflected the changes. Name, Li Yuan. Stat points, 0. Realm, unranked. Techniques, none. Skills, intermediate archery 0/20. Basic tracking 5 out of 10. Divine ability, eternal youth. Equipment slots, locked. He glanced at the floating numbers again and saw his overall combat power had gone from 1-2 to 2-3. It might not seem like a huge jump, but given that he hadn't seen a single person in the village at 2-3, it gave him a reassuring sense of security. Armed with this overall combat power indicator, he could keep a low profile more effectively. And if he encountered someone weaker who didn't know any better, he wouldn't have to remain low-key. Li Yuan returned to the outskirts of Little Ink Mountain. He walked along the mountain path for a while, then slipped onto a small side trail, hacking away with his hatchet to get through the brush. After emerging from the trees into an open clearing, he tucked away the hatchet and readied his bow instead, staying on guard. In the distance, a nearly dried-up creek wound across the clearing. From memory, Li Yuan knew that come springtime this would be a decent spot for game. Right now, though, it was tough to find any animals here. He swung by a few other places he recalled sometimes having wild beasts, but still had no luck. Looks like if I really want to hunt, I'll have to go around to the deeper part of the second ridge. He hesitated. I'll wait a little longer. Li Yuan had briefly considered heading straight to the deeper part of the second ridge, now that he had intermediate archery under his belt. In games and novels, once you leveled up, taking on the next wave of enemies usually became much easier. But he decided it wasn't worth the risk. From his memories, he knew you still had a bit of emergency money, 400 coppers or 4 large coins. In times of plenty, those 4 coins could buy 20 kilograms of millet. Now, he'd be lucky to get 6 kilograms out of it. In truth, that much was only possible on the black market, which was too far away and too dangerous. The only option closer to home was the grain shop in Little Ink Village, where greedy merchants hoarded food to profit from people's disasters. 4 coins there would stretch to maybe 4 kilograms, still enough to keep him and Yu fed for a couple of weeks if they rationed it carefully. Since they still had a bit of time before the money ran out, there was no rush to venture past the second ridge. Li Yuan glanced again at the numbers on his status window, feeling at least somewhat hopeful. I'll spend the next 2 days testing things out. Maybe I can figure out how to earn more stat points each day. With that, he turned back toward the dried creek. Just then, from the dim woods not far away, he spotted a 3-5 drifting into view. Instantly, he spun on his heel to run. But the moment he bolted, that 3-5 picked up speed as well. A sharp male voice called out behind him, "Oi, Pipsqueak, why re you running?" Li Yuan stopped. He recognized that voice. It was Chen San, another hunter. He was tall, burly, and everything Li Yuan wasn't. Plus, Chen San had 4 brothers at home, giving him a strength in numbers that Li Yuan, alone and without kin, sorely lacked. Sure enough, a powerfully built man soon emerged from the trees, his face untroubled, eyes bright with an unmistakable air of aggression. He carried a crude wooden crossbow in his right hand, held the leash of a vicious-looking yellow dog in his left, and had an Eastern-style hatchet strapped to his back. Chen San jogged up and clapped a heavy palm on Li Yuan's shoulder. "Heading home empty-handed again? Don't tell me you want that pretty wife of yours to starve." Despite the casual tone, Li Yuan knew they weren't close. That overly familiar manner was Chen San's way of keeping him in check. Hooking an arm around Li Yuan's shoulder, Chen San gave him a casual squeeze and let out a sneering chuckle. "Tisk, tsk, tsk. You're so scrawny you barely look like a hunter. Just look at me. If you had even half my bulk, you'd be marching straight to the back of the second ridge." With that, he flashed a smug grin, as though saving some grand reveal for later. Given what Chen San knew about Li Yuan, he fully expected the boy to ask, "What's back there? Can you even hunt in winter?" And then, once he'd bragged enough, maybe Li Yuan would say, "Take me with you." But Li Yuan simply replied, "Sorry, I need to get home. Yu is waiting on me for dinner." "Dinner?" Chen San's eyebrows arched, and his voice rose a notch. "What's so great about whatever measly meal you've got at home? Come with me. I'll take you to the far side of the second ridge for a proper feast. We'll track down that boar that chased you before. Haha." Saying this, he casually loosened the rope in his hand. The fierce yellow dog at his side bounded off with an aggressive energy. Once it was a short distance away, Li Yuan glimpsed 1-2 floating above the dog's head. Meanwhile, the number above Chen San read 2-3. Li Yuan hesitated. "So that's a team of 2? Pipsqueak," Chen San boasted, leaning in with a sidelong glare. "Just look at my dog, OL Yeller. When he's chasing the boar, all we have to do is block it from the other side. Couldn't be easier, right? I really can't. My injury hasn't fully healed. My back and legs still hurt." "Hey," Chen San said coldly. "You turning me down? It really does hurt. Fine. Then next time you're up here, when you're feeling better, you're coming with me to the second ridge. Got it?" He stared Li Yuan down, a raw menace in his gaze. All right, next time for sure," Li Yuan answered hastily. Only then did Chen San let go. jabbing a finger at Li Yuan's chest before shifting his attention to another scrawny hunter who had just appeared in the distance. Whistling for his dog, he swaggered off, leaving Li Yuan free to slip away. Li Yuan knew exactly what was on Chen San's mind. The man probably wouldn't dare go into the second ridge alone, so he wanted a companion, or maybe even a patsy. He talked big before heading out, but once Li Yuan was there, he might be thrown straight to the wolves. Besides, the back of the second ridge made for a perfect spot to dispose of a body. In no time at all, the corpse would draw wild animals who'd drag it who knew where. Even reporting it to the authorities wouldn't help. In this famine year, the local authorities hardly acted on anything right away. Letting half a month slip by before investigating was perfectly normal. Even if the authorities didn't choose to delay an investigation, actually locating a missing corpse in the back of the second ridge was unlikely. And even if by some miracle they did find the body, it would probably be so badly mauled by wild animals that a coroner couldn't tell if the victim died at human hands or from a beast attack. Chances were high that once the county magistrate heard someone had disappeared in the second ridge, he'd just file it away without bothering to look deeper. After leaving, Li Yuan avoided the main road and took a roundabout path home. When Li Yuan arrived in the courtyard, the door was only half shut. Yen Yu stood near the wall, perched on her toes, stacking freshly gathered kindling. She hadn't dared to go far, just picked up fallen branches from under the nearby trees. At the sound of his footsteps, she spun around, and when she recognized his face, a soft smile of relief and warmth bloomed on her cheeks. Li Yuan. She ran over, leaping into his arms as though she'd finally let go of a long-held breath. Yuan, Yuan, she murmured. What's wrong? He asked. I saw a stray dog digging up a corpse. The body was only buried a few days ago. Probably wasn't buried deep. I'm scared. So am I. And I came back without a single catch today. It's all right. She tilted her head up, placing her hands gently on his cheeks. We're both here, and we're both safe. That's what matters. Up close, her features were truly lovely, carrying a subtle charm that tempted the heart. Where'd you see that dog? Maybe we can track it down, he said, feeling a flicker of ambition. Startled, she broke into a wry chuckle. It's long gone by now. Besides, I used 2 of our large coins today to get a kilogram each of millet, coarse grain, and beans. Mixed together, it'll last us a while. Did anyone see you buy them? Auntie Wong and her husband were there, so they helped me carry it all home. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dared bring so much back by myself. For a moment, both fell quiet. After such a tense day, the hush between them seemed charged with unspoken longing. Suddenly, Yen Yu gave a startled yelp. What are you? Li Yuan scooped an arm under her knees and lifted her clear off the ground, carrying her into the house with swift strides. But dinner's not even Their voices soon faded into murmurs, becoming the soft whispers of 2 people swept away by each other's warmth. Night fell. The beautiful woman's ragged breathing gradually slowed, her sultry voice lingering like an echo in the air. Li Yuan, you're such a good man. You really know how to care for your wife. All right, I'll get up and make dinner now. Hey, go on and rest. You know I'll take care of everything at home. Over the following days, Li Yuan spent 2 more nights experimenting with his newfound ability, finally arriving at some conclusions. Turns out, this system lived up to its name. It rewarded harmonious conjugal life. Unless he and Yen Yu shared intimacy every night, truly cherishing each other, no stat points would be gained. To test this theory, one night Li Yuan intentionally teased Yen Yu, not caring how she felt at all. The result? 0 points. And to top it off, any daytime rendezvous didn't count. Stat points only came at night. On the 3rd night, Yen Yu now huddled in front of the clay stove, intently watching the flicker of flames. Her pretty face betrayed a swirl of emotions. She'd heard the rumors before that men could change drastically once they had a wife. They'd treat you well before marriage, then treat you poorly after. She just hadn't expected it to happen to her. Her thoughts wandered to Li Yuan's behavior the previous night, and her heart still felt uneasy. Though the two had never held a formal ceremony, they'd effectively been living as husband and wife for some time. Yen Yu had seen how honest and considerate he could be, and life together under one roof had been steady. She'd given him her heart and her body, worried that in these famine-stricken times, there might never be another chance. But now, how had Li Yuan turned into this? Worse, why did he keep pressing her for intimacy in broad daylight these last couple of days? It was so, she sighed quietly, feeling miserable. Crack, crackle, sparks popped in the stove. Suddenly, the fire began to die. Startled, Yen Yu grabbed a few more sticks to feed the flames. As she did, she heard footsteps outside. She recognized them immediately as Li Yuan's. Yet she couldn't bring herself to look up. Last night's bullying still stung. She felt both indignant and apprehensive. "Don't worry about it. Let me handle this." Li Yuan's voice came from just behind her. She was taken aback. Stammering, she said, "Why, you should rest." Just as she spoke, Yen Yu suddenly let out a shriek. Li Yuan lifted her right off the ground in a single motion. "Li Yuan, let me go. Put me down." Yen Yu pounded on his chest with both fists. After a few half-hearted blows, she stopped, tears threatening to spill over as regret crept into her heart. Maybe she'd been too rash before, yet what she feared didn't happen. Li Yuan simply set her on the bed, looked into her reddened eyes and said, "Look at you. You're exhausted, and you're still working? I'll handle things during the day. Besides, my body hasn't fully healed, so I'll stay in for a few more days to recover." He paused for a moment, then placed both hands on her narrow shoulders and spoke earnestly. "Once I'm healed, I'll head to the mountains. I promise we'll have meat on our table soon. Last night was my fault. If I ever do that again, I'll punish myself." With that, he clenched a fist and struck himself hard in the chest. He raised his arm to do it again. Startled, Yen Yu sprang off the bed like a startled cat, grabbing his fist. "What are you doing? Stop," Li Yuan chuckled. "I was going to hit myself until you felt better. I'm not mad anymore." She clung to his hand, terrified he might actually hurt himself, pressing it to her chest. Then, releasing one hand, she gently rubbed the spot he'd punched. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly. "It did a second ago," he said, smiling. "But once you rubbed it, the pain vanished." Yen Yu gave a little snort of laughter, her cheeks turning pink. "My, you sure know how to sweet-talk a girl. Where'd you learn that?" "Learn? You don't need to learn to be sincere," he said, looking genuinely mystified. "I'm just speaking from the heart. If it's a lie, may I be struck by." Before he could finish, Yen Yu darted forward and clamped a hand over his mouth. "Don't say that." Her eyes flashed at him playfully. "It's bad luck." Li Yuan tried prying her hand away but didn't force it, merely resting his fingers lightly on hers. "Don't say things like that," she murmured, cheeks still flushed. Li Yuan nodded, and only then did Yen Yu gingerly loosen her grip. She swung one long leg off the bed, intending to get up and make dinner, but Li Yuan blocked her path again. "I said you need to rest, so rest you shall. If you so much as get up to do any chores today, I'll keep punching myself," he threatened with exaggerated seriousness. Yen Yu's cheeks reddened even more. Deep down, she felt a honeyed warmth spreading through her, sweet, yet a bit embarrassing. Still, she tugged at Li Yuan's sleeve and said, "I understand what you're trying to do, but handling all the housework is my job. That's always been our rule." She might have been frail and slight, but there was a striking stubbornness about her that practically glowed. "Then we'll do it together," Li Yuan suggested. "No," she refused outright. "All right, I understand," he sighed. That night, the two of them turned in early. The next morning, just after dawn, a message flashed across Li Yuan's mind. "You have gained 6 stat points." He paused, momentarily confused. 1 extra point than usual? So there was some hidden bonus at work? Glancing at the woman still asleep in his arms, he felt a wave of contentment. Even malnourished, Yen Yu had a certain alluring charm. He could only imagine how she'd look if she were well-fed and glowing with health, almost like a budding rose waiting to blossom. What's more, this beautiful woman was so gentle, so caring. She insisted on handling the chores herself. Back in his old life, it would have felt like a dream. He needed to develop some real skills, earn money, and take Yen to settle down in Silver Creek. That place was far more orderly, giving him a safer place to lie low and build a future. 4 days later, Li Yuan and Yu's supply of grain was already halfway gone. Worse than that, their meals were bland. No meat, no oil, just dull-tasting mush. It was getting harder to endure. That afternoon, Yu came home from gathering firewood with news from the outside. Li Yuan, Saihua's husband, was attacked by a black bear, left behind in the mountains. I heard he was trying his luck over by the second ridge. She's got 2 little ones at home. Last time you went beyond the second ridge, you got chased by a wild boar. That's how you got hurt in the first place. So does that mean there's no game left in the foothills of Little Ink Mountain? Because her own husband was also a hunter, Yu felt a pang of sympathy for someone in the same predicament. Saihua's family was much like hers. Her husband did the hunting. She stayed home with the children and handled the household chores. Now that her husband was gone in this famine year, who knew how his wife and 2 children would survive? Li Yuan's expression shifted slightly. That uncle? He recalled that this was the hunter he'd seen after refusing Qian San's invitation to head beyond the second ridge. Qian San must have turned around and persuaded that uncle instead. And now, it seemed that had gotten him killed. All of a sudden, a commotion broke out in the distance. Yu hurried outside and flagged down Auntie Wang, who was just stepping out of her own door. What's going on? Auntie Wang looked baffled, having no answers of her own. Before long, a man came running by. Auntie Wang and Yu moved closer, eager for news. The man seemed to know the details. Saihua's husband is dead, but it turns out he had a stash of meat hidden away. Must have kept it well out of sight before. Wait, but that's not the big thing. Anyway, since he's gone, everyone's upset. The Chen family's 2nd and 3rd sons say they want to help with the funeral. Now everyone's rushing over for the feast. With that, the man dashed off. Auntie Wang and Yu exchanged worried looks. It was clear this so-called help was really just eating the fatherless, or rather, taking advantage of a vulnerable family. This is too much, Yu muttered. Auntie Wang gave her sleeve a light tug. Better keep quiet about it, she sighed. Inside the house, Li Yuan stood by the doorway, listening to the noises outside. He glanced down at his status window. Name? Li Yuan. Stat points: 45. Realm? Unranked. Techniques? None. Skills: Intermediate archery 0/20. Basic tracking 5 out of 10. Divine ability: Eternal youth. Equipment slots: locked. After a moment of silence, Li Yuan murmured, 45 stat points saved up. Time to spend them. Qian San's family had 5 strapping brothers. Only Qian San himself was a hunter, but the rest pitched in wherever they could, making it tough for anyone near Little Ink Mountain to stand up to them. Qian San tried to rope me in before, and I played sick to get out of it. He hates going into the second ridge alone, so he's always looking for someone to take the risks for him. Now that Saihua's husband is dead, maybe he'll find another hunter. But there's no telling if he'll come looking for me again. Unless I stop hunting entirely, running into him will only spell trouble. He's the type who'll throw you to the wolves, then feast on your family's remains once you're gone. If I'd agreed to go with him, my household might be the one in ruins now. Yu and I'd lose more than just our emergency money. All sorts of thoughts raced through Li Yuan's mind. Just then, the door banged open. Yu stomped back into the house, shutting the door behind her with a huff. This is outrageous. That Qian San is a bully. Instead of helping a widow and her kids who can barely stay alive, they're throwing themselves a feast. And the neighbors, people from the same community, are lining up with bowls and chopsticks to join in. Humph. She planted her hands on her hips, chest heaving in anger. But Li Yuan could see fear in her eyes. Too, fear that what befell Saihua's family could happen to them. Hey, Li Yuan spoke up, right? Isn't this infuriating? She turned, exasperated. You should probably grab a cloth and cover, Li Yuan said, pointing to her chest. She stared at him, face turning bright red. What's the big deal? Auntie Wang and the other women don't bother. You're younger and prettier than they are, Li Yuan said. Trust me. Maybe stuff some rags under your clothes too. Make yourself look bigger. Is that so? Hearing him call her pretty made her blush. She was used to smudging her face with ash before going out, but binding her chest and making herself look fat was new. After a bit of fussing, she managed to make herself look dowdy enough. As she studied the drab figure in the copper mirror, Yu couldn't help a giggle. But the moment she remembered the plight of her neighbor, her expression dimmed. Lips trembling, she asked, "Do you think there's anything we can do to help her?" Li Yuan slowly shook his head. It's hard enough just taking care of ourselves. That afternoon, Yu went next door to chat with Auntie Wang. Li Yuan sat alone in the quiet, earthen-walled room. He summoned the status window and set his gaze on basic tracking, tapping the plus symbol 5 times. Instantly, a keen, nimble awareness coursed through him. Basic tracking, 5/10. New. Intermediate tracking, 0/20. It was as if he'd been through an intense training session devoted solely to tracking a vicious beast. In his mind's eye, he recalled pursuing it day and night, relying on intuition and every clue it left behind. The beast seemed to run endlessly, and he pushed himself to the brink, never sleeping well, always on alert for sudden changes in the wilderness. Finally, his tracking skills surged. When Li Yuan checked his combat rating, his unarmed stat was still 0-1. But picking up his bow again brought it to 2-3. It seems tracking doesn't show up in overall combat power, but it definitely sharpened my reflexes, more of a soft power. With tracking, I can follow a target without being seen, and I can also throw off anyone following me. He then spent stat points on intermediate archery, tapping the plus symbol a full 20 times. Intermediate archery, 0/20. New. Advanced archery, 0/40. Suddenly, it felt as if months of archery practice, sweat, and determination had fused into his muscles. His skill improved drastically. The combined gains in archery and tracking also strengthened him physically. Unarmed, his range had climbed from 0-1 to 1-2. But once he picked up the bow, it jumped to 5-6. Qian San had registered at 3-5 when he had that dog with him. Now Li Yuan was at 5-6. He exhaled quietly, feeling more at ease. He looked at the status window again, which reflected the changes. Name, Li Yuan. Stat points, 20. Realm, unranked. Techniques, none. Skills, advanced archery 0/40. Intermediate tracking 0/20. Divine ability, eternal youth. Equipment slots, locked. I've got 20 points left. Should I use them now or wait until I reach another 40? After a pause, he decided to hold off. Archery gave him a direct power boost, while tracking was mainly utility. If he could gather enough points to upgrade archery again, it might strengthen him even more. Later in the afternoon, Yu came back to make dinner, bringing the latest gossip with her. Li Yuan, she began. They held that feast over at Saihua's place today. You remember, Monk Pan? He actually went to speak up for her. Right in front of everyone, he started cursing out Qian Er and Qian San. She sounded animated at first, but then her tone fell. No one backed him up, though. The people sitting there just kept eating like nothing was happening, as if he wasn't even there. He tried to snatch the meat back so Kaihua and her kids could have it. But Qian Er or Qian San didn't even need to lift a finger themselves. Someone else jumped him. They gave him a real beating. He was over there cursing at Qian Er and Qian San, and then Qian San just walked up and kicked him square in the mouth, knocked out a few of his teeth, blood everywhere. No good deed goes unpunished, I guess. Li Yuan went quiet. He was getting a painfully clear picture of the grim world he'd landed in. Right then, a loud knocking started outside, the gate rattling with each thud. Yu peeked out the window and went white. It's Qian San. What's he doing here? She was so panicked that she didn't know what to do. Her face showed nothing but fear. Li Yuan stood, grabbing his bow and quiver. He rested a hand on her shoulder, gently pressing her into a wooden chair. "Stay put," he said. "But why is he here?" she whispered, her voice quivering. "You just stay inside," Li Yuan replied. "I'll handle whatever this is." Under her anxious gaze, he stepped out into the yard. At the fence, a tall, burly figure was kicking the wooden gate hard enough to knock it off its hinges. Seeing Li Yuan approach, Qian San straightened. "Pipsqueak, quit faking. I know you're fine now. Listen, I'll cut to the chase. You've got two choices. 1, come hunting with me, and from now on you'll never go hungry. 2, hand over your bow, your pitchfork, and your hunting permit. If you won't hunt, someone else will." Li Yuan forced a laugh. "Now, you're just outright picking on me? Pick on you? Don't flatter yourself." Qian San's expression darkened. "There aren't many hunters in this community, so we're supposed to go together. You're out of the loop, so you don't know what's happening in other places. This is how they do it. Enough talk. Either you hunt with me, or you stop hunting altogether." Li Yuan rubbed his hands, as if embarrassed. "Just give me a few more days to fully recover. Then I'll come along, all right?" 3 days, Qian San said impatiently. "That's it. How about 5? My injury's worse than it looks." "No, 3 days. I'll come for you then." With a cold snort, Qian San turned on his heel and stalked away. As he passed a scabbed old tree, a young man slipped out from behind it to follow. That young ruffian clutched a bow in one hand and wore a blade on his back, the floating number 1, 2 drifting above his head. Li Yuan's eyes narrowed. He recognized the fellow as a local troublemaker who often tagged along with Qian San, but he shouldn't have had a bow. Then it clicked. Saihwa's husband just died. Qian San probably helped himself to the dead man's bow and hunting permit. Li Yuan had barely stepped into the house when Yen Yu dragged over a long bench and used it to block the door. She sat down on it, her back pressed against the door, her face brimming with anxiety. "Li Yuan, why is Qian San after you?" "He's probably got his eye on my provisional hunting permit." "Aren't those issued by the government? How dare they try to steal it? It doesn't have my name on it." Normally, the constables keep an eye on things and they stay in line, more or less. But these days, the authorities don't bother with stuff like this. "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" Yen Yu muttered, wringing her hands. "What if we ask Uncle Wang next door and maybe a few other men? If you all band together, Qian San won't dare to make a move." "A few other men? Besides Uncle Wang, who else would be willing to help?" "Monk Pan," Yen Yu blurted out. Li Yuan thought for a moment, then shook his head. Putting together a small crew and dragging other people into this, even with family involved, isn't a good idea. Besides, Uncle Wang might be strong, but he's just a mild-mannered, honest man. And Monk Pan has nothing to do with me at all. If the 3 of us teamed up, we'd be a ragtag bunch, hardly better than me going it alone. Yen Yu tried to say more, but Li Yuan sat down beside her, slipped his right arm around her back, and lightly hooked her soft shoulder. In a low voice, he assured, "Leave the trouble outside to me. Don't worry about it. How can you handle it? I'll go hunting with him. You're not going to end up like Saihwa's husband, are you? He never came back after he went off." No. With such a pretty wife waiting at home, how could I bear not to return?" Yen Yu's cheeks flushed. "Oh, stop teasing me," she murmured, leaning against him, though her face was still etched with worry. Li Yuan lifted his head, looking around the dimly lit room, his eyes reflecting a calm glimmer. In his previous life, he had been a butcher. Back then, he was scared at first, but after killing so many pigs, he grew numb. His gaze turned cold and steady. Qian San had to die. If he didn't kill him, he'd be forced into a head-on fight. All his strength was in his bow. At best, 1 arrow could take out 1 man, but against a group, he'd stand little chance. And if he shot someone in broad daylight, he'd be labeled a murderer and hauled in by the authorities. If he didn't shoot, they'd beat him senseless, and he'd have no way out. If something happened to him, Yen, you wouldn't have any protection either. So, where to kill him? Li Yuan wondered. Maybe while Qian-san was out hunting, that would be ideal. But I have no idea if he's even going in the next few days, or where he plans to go. It was too hard to pin down. There were just too many variables. Still, there was one place Qian-san was sure to show up, his own home. Next question. When to kill him? Today? That wouldn't work. I only just had a falling out with him. If he dies right now, I'll be the first suspect. Then, in a couple of days? That's still no good. What if something unexpected happens? Forget it. I'll keep an eye on him, and if an opportunity arises, I'll take it. Li Yuan grew calmer by the second. It was the same look he wore back when he slaughtered pigs. That night, a bright moon lit up the land. The wind was mild, but frost glazed the ground, cold as ice. Earlier in the day, Yen Yu had patched the window. Now, soft creaking echoed through the house. After a long while, Yen Yu collapsed softly, drifting off in her man's arms. They clung together under the covers, warm and snug, like a tiny safe haven blocking out the darkness and chill of winter, the one and only pocket of light, warmth, joy, and comfort in this chaotic era. Li Yuan gently slipped his arm free and whispered, I need to go to the toilet. If you drift off, don't come out. Yen Yu was already sleeping soundly. She mumbled drowsily and turned her warm body the other way. Li Yuan carefully lifted the blankets and climbed out of bed. He dressed swiftly, took down his large bow and quiver from the wall, and after a moment's thought, used the remaining 20 stat points on intermediate tracking. Intermediate tracking, 0/20ths. New. Advanced tracking, 0/40ths. A peculiar rush of clarity coursed through him, flooding his mind with a veteran tracker's skill and experience. Suddenly, he was keenly aware of how to read light and shadow, conceal his own presence, and zero in on his target. Quietly pushing open the back door, Li Yuan crouched low, then darted outside with a whoosh. He moved fast and light, like a prowling panther slipping through the village. Within moments, he had vanished into the small grove behind his home. He ran hard, the wind roaring past his ears. Though the freezing air cut like a knife, he paid it no mind, eyes flicking around to scout for any danger. He had a hidden knack for picking up the slightest hints of threat. If something hostile lurked about, he'd see numbers appear. Little Ink Village wasn't large, really more a hamlet than anything else. But they called it a village to match the official terminology. Before long, Li Yuan arrived at Qian-san's home and tucked himself behind the dark silhouette of an old tree. Inside Qian-san's place, Qian-san was drinking, bragging about the day's events. A fairly striking woman, seated on his lap, giggled as she poured his wine. You were so impressive today, she teased. You didn't even need to lift a finger. Monk Pan ended up getting thrashed by everyone else. Qian-san let out a coarse laugh. This is all about people's hearts, about using their strengths to your advantage. Explaining it to you would be pointless. Give it some time. Once I've rounded up all the hunters here in Little Ink Village, we'll head into the mountains. And when I'm the one holding all the meat, I'll do whatever I please in this village. The woman scoffed. Pfft. Round them all up? There are 6 hunting families here. You've only just gotten hold of the provisional hunting permit of Tsaihua's husband, so there are still 4 more families left. Qian-san said, Pour me some wine. I'll deal with them one by one. Hooking her arms around his neck, she teased. I heard there are places where a piece of meat no bigger than your palm is enough to get you another man's wife. Is that true? Sure is, Qian-san replied. Take the Zhao family next door, for example. Some guy did it right in front of the husband, and the husband even stood guard for him. The woman giggled. Some time later, reeking of wine, Qian-san pushed her down onto the bed and dropped his trousers, ready to climb on. Suddenly, he frowned and muttered, You go on to sleep. I've gotta step outside. Flushing red, he pulled his pants back up and staggered out, humming some off-key tune. After walking 100 meters or so, he found an open-air latrine, dropped his pants and squatted down. Meanwhile, Off in a dark corner, a shadowy figure was creeping closer. The figure moved with barely a whisper, each footstep drowned out by the faint sounds of the night. Soon, the figure was within 20 or so paces of Chen San. A quick glance at himself. His overall combat power was 5-6. A look at Chen San, still squatting, whose overall combat power was still 0-1. With his bow in his left hand, he reached into his quiver with his right, his fingers hovering over an arrow. Then he paused. Sliding his hand lower, he felt a smooth stone. Throwing stones was a fundamental skill for hunters, typically used against small prey to stun them without damaging their pelts, so they could be sold for a higher price. Chen San stayed squatted there, nodding to himself, still warm from the alcohol. The cold didn't bother him a bit. 3 days, you got 3 days, pipsqueak. Tomorrow I'll come find you again, he mumbled. And just then, a stone sailed through more than 30 meters of darkness without a sound, cutting through the chill night air before slamming hard into Chen San's forehead. Ack! A jolt of searing pain shot through him. Off balance and unable to control himself, he toppled backward with a heavy thud, straight into the latrine pit, sinking right in. The moment Chen San tumbled into the latrine pit, he lost consciousness. His body landed in the muck and barely twitched a couple of times before sinking in completely. Under the moonlight, Li Yuan saw that the stone he had thrown rolled right into Chen San's pant leg and fell in along with him. That saved Li Yuan a little trouble. No one was going to dredge the latrine just to find some random stone, let alone suspect him of anything. Even so, Li Yuan didn't leave immediately. Standing motionless in the freezing winter night, he took another smooth pebble from his pouch. The wind was like a blade against his cheeks and the backs of his hands, but he stayed perfectly still, watching. He needed to confirm 2 things. The first was that Chen San really was dead, and the second was whether anyone else would show up. If someone came to help, they wouldn't guess that Chen San had been taken out by a stone. There was no way to see clearly in the pitch-black, windy night, but if anyone did come across him, they'd probably try to pull him out. Li Yuan wanted to have a sense of how things might unfold. As for why he didn't use an arrow, it was too conspicuous. People might suspect him too easily by drawing a direct link between Chen San's death and a hunter's arrow. He waited in place for nearly half the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Seeing no movement from the pit and no one approaching, Li Yuan finally hunched low and darted into the shadowy woods, racing back home. Before long, another figure appeared outside Chen San's front door. Moonlight fell on his battered face, bruises around both eyes. The bald man wore plain clothes and gripped an iron rod. Though his arms were mottled with bruises, his eyes shone with defiant energy. He strode up to Chen San's door, inhaled sharply, then lashed out with a powerful kick. Boom! The door flew open. Chen San, you son of a bitch! I'm here to do the world a favor and rid it of scum, the bald man bellowed, charging inside with his iron rod raised high. A woman's scream echoed from within. Monk Pan, what are you doing? Chen San's wife shrieked, clutching at the blanket wrapped around her. Help! Husband! Help! Monk Pan has gone mad. Li Yuan had no idea what was going on outside. By the time he returned to the house, fumbling quietly through the dark, he vaulted the fence and carefully slipped through the door. He hurriedly shed his ice-cold clothes, tugged off his old pants and boots, and gingerly climbed back into bed. Yenyu, sensing the shift in the mattress, called out in a half-awake mumble. Li Yuan? I'm here, he answered softly. How long were you gone? Just a little while. She gave a drowsy sigh and reached out with her small foot, trying to curl up against him. But the moment her leg brushed him, she gasped, Oh, you're freezing. It's cold out, he said. Then hurry and hold me. Yenyu gathered the blankets and tucked them snugly around them both. Pressing her warm body against his chilled skin, she radiated heat like a little stove. Soon, the bedding felt toasty, cozier than if they'd had a coal brazier going. Li Yuan drew her closer, thinking how sweet she was to look after him like this. Then she started mumbling again. Li Yuan, why don't you just not go hunting with Chen San? I don't trust that man. He's up to no good, and you two have nothing in common. I'm sure nothing good will come of it." But as soon as she said it, she remembered the consequences if he didn't go, and tears slipped down her cheeks. "What are we going to do?" she whimpered over and over. Li Yuan gently stroked her hair. "Don't worry, I'll be careful. It's late. Let's sleep." The next morning, just at daybreak, the entire Little Ink village exploded with news. Monk Pan killed someone. Monk Pan committed murder. How dare he? He was humiliated in broad daylight. He must have gone out at night to get even. Li Yuan, having spent the previous night half on edge, rushing in and out and then romancing Yen Yu until late, was still asleep. Yen Yu, on the other hand, felt surprisingly well-rested. She opened the door a crack and peered outside. Spotting Auntie Wong from next door, she ran over at once, curiosity and a strange hint of anticipation swirling inside her. "Auntie Wong, what happened?" Aunt Wong, always up on the latest gossip, leaned over and whispered, "It seems like Monk Pan went and killed Chen San last night." "Huh!" Yen Yu's eyes went wide. She couldn't quite believe it. Yet a tiny spark of relief leapt in her chest. Almost immediately, though, she frowned. "But that doesn't make sense. Chen San is so strong, and Monk Pan was beaten up just yesterday. How could he have possibly taken down Chen San?" "I'm not sure," Auntie Wong said. "I'm dying to find out the whole story myself." "Oh," Yen Yu wavered, feeling both uncertain and worried that the news might not be true after all. Yen Yu stood on her tiptoes, glancing nervously into the distance. She considered going over for a look, but then remembered Li Yuan's warning to stay away from crowds. She stayed put, waiting anxiously. Eventually, she spotted some villagers returning from Chen San's place and hurried over with Auntie Wong to ask what had happened. That was when she got the confirmation. Her heart swelled with excitement, like it was a New Year celebration. Although she forced herself to keep calm, inside she was practically singing, "Today is a good day." Suddenly, one of the men she was questioning asked, "Didn't Chen San come looking for Li Yuan last night?" Caught off guard, Yen Yu let out a long sigh, putting on a mournful expression. "Chen San wanted my Li Yuan to team up with him. Chen San was so capable. I told Li Yuan he had to follow him and learn from him." Li Yuan was anxious, too. He had a run-in with a wild boar not long ago, and the injury still bothers him. He couldn't wait to heal up and go hunting with Chen San. And now, how did this happen? "My poor Li Yuan, he just doesn't have good fortune." Around midday, Li Yuan finally stirred, yawning from a late night of coming and going and from his time in bed with Yen Yu. As he tugged on his boots, he heard her humming a cheerful tune. "Yen Yu," he called out, "what's got you in such a good mood?" Yen Yu dropped the firewood she was holding and came over, her cheeks pink from the warmth of the stove. "Guess what? Chen San died last night, and that Monk Pan is really something, isn't he? He was angry because of what happened to Sister Kaihua during the day. So last night he stormed over with an iron rod and knocked Chen San into a latrine pit. Now that's a real hero for you." Li Yuan froze in surprise. So Chen San's death had been pinned on Monk Pan. Quite the coincidence, but he wasn't about to start explaining anything. "Don't look too happy. People might get suspicious." "I know, I'm not a fool." With that, she hurried back to tend the fire, humming her tune again under her breath. Before long, the rich aroma of porridge filled the house. Yen Yu stopped feeding firewood into the stove and got up to serve the meal. In the iron pot, husked grains, millet, and beans boiled together into a steaming hot mash. This kind of coarse, simple fare was something Li Yuan would never have imagined eating back in his old life. But now he had no choice. It tasted painfully bland to him, but for Yen Yu, who had never known real feasts, it was fine enough. Once 2 bowls of food were on the table, she brought over another dish, a bowl of chopped radish pickles. "Li Yuan," she said, "I traded for these with Auntie Wong. They're sour and salty, good for the appetite." With that, Yen Yu picked out the best-looking piece of pickled radish and placed it in Li Yuan's bowl. Li Yuan took a deep breath and began to eat. The meal was dry and rough with barely a hint of oil. He quickly finished, then put down his chopsticks and flopped onto the bed to rest. Yen Yu continued eating slowly. Suddenly, she glanced up at Li Yuan and asked, "Have you gotten stronger?" Li Yuan replied, "I've just been resting up at home, that's all." Shaking her head, she insisted, "No, really, you look more muscular. And you've got more strength in your waist." She trailed off, her cheeks coloring. Li Yuan raised an eyebrow. "Why are you blushing?" "I asked Auntie Wang about her husband, and she bragged about how impressive he is in bed. But when I compare him to you..." Yen Yu's face burned bright red. "Forget it," she muttered. Just then, commotion rose outside. Bowl and chopsticks in hand, Yen Yu edged over to the door. She leaned against the frame, one embroidered slipper already over the threshold, craning her neck to look outside. "Hey, come look. What's wrong? Come see." She waved him over. "The bailiffs are taking Monk Pan away. They're leading him out of the village." Li Yuan got up and walked to the door, peering out. On the dirt path that ran through Little Ink Village, a shackled, bald, and bruised man was being led forward by a bailiff. Trailing behind was a sword-carrying officer in plain clothes, seemingly part of the same group. A small crowd stood at a distance, clustered in twos and threes, watching from afar and whispering quietly, so softly that hardly anyone could overhear. Yen Yu rose up on tiptoe to see better, muttering, "Why didn't Monk Pan run if he killed someone? Did he just wait around for the bailiffs to catch him?" A moment later, she added, "The Chen family has good connections with the authorities. It's no wonder the bailiffs showed up so fast." "Hey, you don't think the Chen family will come after us too, do you?" At the thought, she grew anxious all over again. "What can they possibly do?" "Don't worry about it," Li Yuan replied offhandedly, leaving it at that. As for why Monk Pan hadn't tried to flee, a little common sense offered an easy answer. There were always people around the Chen home. If a fight had broken out, Chen San's friends and neighbors, who all had close ties to him, would have been there in an instant. Monk Pan wasn't some invincible master. If things got loud, the neighbors, many of whom were friendly with the Chen family, would rush over. He'd be outnumbered and subdued in no time. Li Yuan shook his head slightly, thinking, maybe Monk Pan only wanted to teach Chen San a lesson and never intended to kill him. But a twist of fate ended in murder. In times as chaotic as these, you have to look out for yourself. Don't play the hero unless you want to risk your life. He kept an eye on the bailiffs. Numbers floated above their heads, revealing their combat power. The one leading Monk Pan by the shackles, a bailiff with a blade at his waist. An actual combat weapon, far better than Li Yuan's simple hatchet, had an overall combat power of 4-5. But the man in plain clothes walking behind them was much more formidable, showing a power of 19-20. How could there be such a huge difference? After a little thought, Li Yuan had a hunch. This probably wasn't a typical ancient dynasty, but at least a low martial world, where skilled martial artists and ordinary folk were worlds apart, just like the wuxia novels he remembered. That day, Li Yuan decided not to rush out hunting. He would lie low and wait for things to calm down. Besides, he still had enough money for another couple of days. He could manage even if the meals were a bit rough. It was better than risk getting himself killed prematurely. That night, Yen Yu blew out the candle in the dim house, stripped off her cloth pants, and slipped under the blanket. Folding her long, pale legs beneath her, she snuggled up to Li Yuan as though trying to melt into him. Li Yuan rested a hand on her shoulder. She felt thinner than before, and he pulled her close. Sensing his touch, she cuddled in without hesitation. They clung together, inseparable. His thoughts drifted back to that mysterious swordsman with the 19-20 floating overhead. He whispered a question to her. "I never asked, what's your relationship to Yen Mu?" Yen Mu was that old friend of Li Yuan's who carried himself like a gallant hero. Before leaving town on some quest, he had entrusted Yen Yu to Li Yuan's care. Then he vanished, never to return. Yen Yu blushed. "He's my nephew. I'm his aunt. I'm from an older branch of the family." Li Yuan was a bit at a loss for words. The family tree sounded complicated. He imagined his sworn brother having a little aunt who was now Li Yuan's own wife. So what would that make him, a brother-in-law or uncle by marriage? Yan Yu's face went red. We just each mind our own titles. No need to overthink it. Li Yuan grew curious. If you're his aunt, what happened to his parents? And why did he leave you in my care? Yan Yu's face clouded. Our family was attacked by sea raiders. I was the only one who survived. She paused, then went on. Yan Mu said he had to escort a good official to the Jade capital. As for why, he wouldn't say. I know he just didn't want me to worry. The Jade capital was where the emperor reigned. But Li Yuan wasn't especially concerned with all that. He just asked, so Yan Mu? His martial arts must be really impressive, right? Yan Yu shook her head. I'm not really sure. Yan Mu was always away, and only came home when the sea raiders attacked our family. As she spoke, a sudden recollection lit her eyes. Oh, I remember he mentioned some things, how the martial path is divided into 9 ranks, how once you're ranked, your strength is unstoppable, and something about how training hinges on blood. Pig's blood raises pigs, dragon's blood raises dragons. He also mentioned a 6th rank life chronicle that can change your fate. So there are 9 ranks in martial arts? Ranked martial artists, pig's blood raises pigs, dragon's blood raises dragons? And what's a life chronicle? Li Yuan felt like he finally had an answer. This world not only had martial arts but also a strict grading system, and apparently hitting 6th rank meant some kind of transformation. He'd have to be even more careful from now on. He fell silent, and Yan Yu didn't speak either. Not long after, the night air was filled with the sounds of their intimate murmurs. By the time the young woman fell asleep, Li Yuan lay on his side, staring at the patched-up paper window. After a while, he closed his eyes too. Better sleep. Overthinking won't help anyway. 3 days passed in a blink. The grain they'd bought was nearly gone. Yan Yu and Auntie Wang decided to head back to the unscrupulous merchant's shop to buy more. Uncle Wang, who usually worked at a restaurant in the nearby town, had no business there these days. Business was slow. With nothing better to do, he brought his son and daughter along to buy food as well. Since the 2 families lived close and often helped each other, and the grain store was nearby, Li Yuan didn't feel any need to tag along. The government was still around. At least the bare minimum law and order was in place. Buying grain in broad daylight along a main road was generally safe, unless brigands or sea raiders made it into the county. Today, he decided to scout the mountains. 5 days had passed since Chen San's death, and the dust had settled. Outside the village, Monk Pan was thrown into the county jail, awaiting execution in a few days. As for the Chen family's 5 brothers in Little Ink Village, not all of them were hunters to begin with. Chen De, Chen Si, and Chen Wu spent most of their time away. Now that the supposed killer was caught, they had no interest in poking around. That left only Chen Er in the village. He was a roughneck who led a gang of 5 thugs. He knew about Chen San's grand plan to pull all the hunters under his thumb so he could live large and boss people around. With Chen San gone, Chen Er intended to pick up where his brother left off. Who could have guessed Monk Pan would reveal Chen San's scheme to the entire village on his way out? No one knew how he found out. Maybe Chen San's wife had been so terrified that she spilled everything on the spot. Either way, the other hunters in the village weren't having it. They banded together, ready to push back if Chen Er so much as showed his face. And while Chen Er might act tough, he didn't actually know the first thing about hunting. Then there was that little hoodlum, Xiao Fei, who'd gotten hold of the provisional hunting permit of Caihua's husband. Sure, he could intimidate a few people, but he was useless when it came to taking on wild animals. As a result, the hunting situation opened up for Li Yuan. The competition had scattered, the threats were gone. He was tired of plain fare and wanted some meat, so off to the mountains he went. Making his way around the outer reaches of Little Ink Mountain, Li Yuan felt a bit more confident with the floating 5-6 by his side. Although he hadn't managed to find a martial arts manual yet, he wasn't in any rush. Survival and avoiding danger were his top priorities. If he could track down a manual, great. If not, he'd wait. It was foolish to wander around like a headless chicken hoping a book might fall from the sky. In the meantime, he could boost his archery and tracking skills. As long as he could hunt well, he could keep his belly full and, with enough money saved, move somewhere safer. Before long, he arrived at a spring on the edge of the mountain. He took a quick look around. No wildlife in sight. Instead, he spotted 3 men sitting together, talking. Tied to a wooden stake near them were 3 hunting dogs. These 3 were from the Hunter Alliance in Little Ink Village, the very group Chen San had planned to pressure but never got the chance to. One of the men, noticing someone in the trees, squinted to get a better look. Recognizing the figure, he called out, "Is that you, Pipsqueak?" Li Yuan stepped out. Once the man saw Li Yuan clearly, he gave a friendly grin. "You healed up and never told us." Li Yuan returned the smile. "My body's only just recovered. Figured I'd come up the mountain for a look." His gaze swept over the 3 men. The one who had spoken was of average height but solidly built, dressed in a black fur coat. One he'd made from a black bear he'd hunted. That feat alone was enough to keep Chen San wary of him. In the village, people simply called him Bear, and after a while, no one bothered using his real name anymore. The numbers 3, 4 floated above Bear's head, while his dog showed 1, 2. If he unleashed the dog, their combined power might reach 4, 6. No wonder Chen San had been cautious around him. The other 2 hunters were a tall, baby-faced man named Zhang Nuli, a newcomer taking over from his retired father, and a pockmarked fellow called Zhang Chulu, usually nicknamed Ugly Zhang. Their dogs both registered 1, 2, and they themselves were 1, 2 as well, on par with the old Li Yuan before his upgrade, meaning they could only scrounge around the outer edges of Little Ink Mountain. Still, they had one advantage over Li Yuan. While his dog had died, theirs were still alive. "Looking stout. Seems like your missus has been hiding some meat from us. She must have been saving it all for you so you could recover." Clapping both hands on Li Yuan's shoulders, Bear grinned in approval. He chuckled. "My wife's the same way. If I'm not hurt, she never brings out the good stuff." Next to him, Zhang Nuli spoke up. "Why not join us?" But Bear lifted a hand, and Zhang Nuli immediately fell silent. Throwing an arm around Li Yuan's shoulder, Bear leaned in and said with genuine concern, "You know, Chen San nearly messed us up. Thank goodness Monk Pan caught on, or who knows what trouble we'd be in. But now that Chen San's gone, maybe someone else will come after us. Chen Er, for instance, is still around. And even if we get rid of Chen Er, there will always be some scoundrel out there itching to take advantage of us hunters. Think any of those punks would brave the mountains themselves? Not a chance." Cursing under his breath, Bear continued, "That's why we have to stick together. Strength in numbers. Then we won't have to be afraid of anyone. We can split whatever we hunt 4 ways. How about it?" Li Yuan hesitated. Zhang Nuli chimed in, "Bear's a great hunter. He's doing us a favor by offering to share the spoils. This is a good deal." Ugly Zhang joined in. "Come on, Pipsqueak. The 4 of us can feast on meat and wine every day. And if some thug shows up, we'll pound him into the dirt. Yesterday, that little punk Xiao Fei dared act tough in front of us. One good smack from Bear was all it took. He didn't even know who his own mother was after that. The world's a mess right now. Nothing but famine and danger wherever you go. If we band together, we can make something of ourselves. Share the good times and stick it out through the bad. No one gets left behind." At first, Li Yuan felt a twinge of temptation. After all, joining a small team might mean less attention on him. But the look in Ugly Zhang's eyes and the restlessness in the group made him quickly decide otherwise. He cleared his throat. "Bear, I appreciate the offer, really, but I'm not that ambitious. I just want to hunt enough to get by. No competing, no fighting, just a warm home with my wife." Bear let out a hearty laugh, though his eyes flickered with annoyance. "We feel the same, huh? But hey, if you're not ready now, no worries. We're not like Chen San, forcing people into anything. Whenever you come around, my door's open." "Thanks." Li Yuan forced a polite smile and turned to leave. Watching him walk away, Ugly Zhang started swearing under his breath. That kid doesn't know a good thing when he sees it. Bear let out a laugh. Forget it. He was plenty polite, just seems like that wild boar scare took all the fight out of him. Once he can't bag any game, he'll be back. Ugly Zhang burst into loud laughter, and Zhang Nuli joined in. Never mind him, Bear added, standing up. Today, the three of us will head over to the second ridge. Let's go. Ugly Zhang patted his pants, got to his feet, and said, I'll follow your lead, Bear. With that, the trio leashed their dogs and headed deeper into the mountains. Li Yuan watched them disappear into the second ridge before quietly slipping through the same mountain pass. Once inside, he crouched behind an old tree and waited until they entered a narrow valley. Then he circled around in a different direction. It was times like these that his advanced tracking really shone. He could mask his presence and move with incredible stealth, like a predator stalking its prey. Step by step, he ventured further into the wilderness. Not long after, he spotted a wild boar rooting around in the dirt. A 3-4 hovered above its head. Li Yuan silently drew an arrow from his quiver, hesitated, then lowered it. A boar that size would be way too conspicuous if he took it back to the village. Better to hold out for smaller game. He quietly retreated, and the boar never even noticed him. Winding around to another area, he spent half the day searching without coming across a single creature. The forest felt like a labyrinth, every part looking much the same. Li Yuan couldn't help thinking how handy a good hunting dog would be. One whiff of a scent and it could lead him straight to his target. Far more efficient than wandering aimlessly. Just as the thought crossed his mind, he paused. There, in the low shrubs up ahead, a pheasant was pecking about. Occasionally it stopped to check its surroundings, stepping on dry sticks and making a soft cluck-cluck sound. Above it hovered 01. The pheasant glanced left and right, half shielded by the shrubbery. But for Li Yuan, that 01 stood out like a beacon. He swiftly took out a smooth stone. The pheasant froze, suddenly sensing danger. It turned its head, just in time to see a flash of light streaking toward it. Thwack! The stone slammed into the bird's skull, striking it dead in an instant. Li Yuan dashed over, scooped up the pheasant, dropped it into the burlap sack he'd brought, and headed back without wasting a moment. Li Yuan returned to Little Ink Village with a sack slung over his back. Since the pheasant hadn't bled, there wasn't the slightest whiff of blood on him. Still, there was no hiding his catch from those with sharp eyes. Along the way, several people spotted him. Pipsqueak, did you bring something back? Got lucky this time, huh? You didn't just swipe some poor fella's catch from a trap, did you? What is it? A pheasant? A hare? Li Yuan only smiled. Just a little pheasant I happened upon while strolling around. Pure luck. Pure luck. When he got home, Yen Yu wasn't back yet. He waited a while before hearing a noise at the fence. Peeking outside, he saw his wife in a dingy gray coat, looking rather plump around the belly. Her face smudged with ash, pushing the gate open while carrying a large bamboo basket. The sight amused Li Yuan. In these times, you couldn't be too careful. A woman who was even slightly attractive could easily invite trouble. Maybe not today, but if times got any rougher and someone happened to set eyes on her, who knew what might happen? In a chaotic era, it was best to act beneath notice. Even if you could eat 10 portions, you only eat 3. Otherwise, someone was bound to come knocking. The moment Yen Yu opened the door and spotted Li Yuan, she gave a little sigh and said, "Ah, prices have gone up again. I had to haggle forever, and in the end I could only get 1.5 kilograms of millet and 1 kilogram of beans for 2 large coins." As she spoke, her gaze fell on Li Yuan's empty hands, and she looked a bit disappointed. Didn't manage to catch anything again today, huh? Though she understood her husband's struggles, she couldn't help feeling a bit annoyed. Li Yuan grinned. "Why don't you go check inside?" "Huh." Yen Yu froze for a moment, then hastened into the house with her basket. A quick glance around revealed a burlap sack in the corner with a plump, brightly colored pheasant lying on top. Li Yuan. She set down her basket, her eyes lighting up with excitement. For a moment, she didn't even know what to say. Li Yuan just said, "Hurry and make something to eat. I'm starving." Yan Yu beamed. Yes, sir. You rest for a bit. You've had a long day. Winter nights fell early, and unlike the county town, there were no street lanterns in Little Ink Village. The roads turned pitch black. One look outside and it felt like the entire world had been swallowed by cold, darkness, and loneliness. Only the small glow inside their home gave off any sense of warmth. First, Yan Yu plucked off the pheasant's colorful feathers, planning to sell them later. Then she rendered about half a bowl of bird fat. Separating out half the bird, she placed it on a plate and slid it toward Li Yuan. Li Yuan, would you take some over to Auntie Wang's family next door? Yan Yu said. Sure, Li Yuan said, taking the plate over to the Wang family's place. The Wang family lived right next door and had often helped him and Yan Yu. In fact, Yan Yu had gone shopping for grain with them the last couple of times. They'd probably seen him come home with the pheasant, and while they wouldn't say anything if he kept it all, it might leave them feeling snubbed. Better to stay on friendly terms with your neighbors. Yan Yu's gesture proved she wasn't some stingy housewife. She had a warm heart and knew how to show gratitude. Before long, Li Yuan was knocking on the Wang's door, calling out, Uncle Wang, Auntie Wang. A tall, rather quiet man answered. Li Yuan, what brings you here so late? Nothing much, Li Yuan replied with a grin. I caught a pheasant today, and my wife told me to bring some over for you. Uncle Wang froze for a moment, eyeing the chunk of meat on Li Yuan's plate. That's not cheap these days. You should keep it for yourselves. He was an honest man, but Auntie Wang cleared her throat, clearly in favor of accepting the gift. Li Yuan glanced inside. Seated at a low wooden table were a boy and a girl with short pigtails, both staring hungrily at the meat in his hands. Don't be polite, Uncle Wang, he said, stepping inside. Auntie Wang hurriedly grabbed a plate to receive the meat. Once everything was settled, Li Yuan started to head home. At the door, Uncle Wang clapped him on the shoulder and said quietly, In times like these, it's hard to find someone like you. We're neighbors, after all, Li Yuan answered simply, about to leave. Just then, Auntie Wang ran out with a small jar in her hand. Li Yuan, we've still got a bit of salt stored up. Take some back for you and Yan Yu. Salt? Li Yuan's eyes lit up. Thank you, Auntie Wang. I won't stand on ceremony. When he got back, Yan Yu was still cooking. It took another stick of incense's time for her to finish. Then, at last, the porridge was ready, stirred with bird fat. Salted pheasant sat steaming on a plate. The two of them dug in like starving souls, devouring every bite and still wishing for more. Li Yuan couldn't remember the last time anything had tasted so good. After dinner, Yan Yu washed the pots, scrubbed the dishes, and heated up water so they could both wash up. Li Yuan lounged on the bed like a lord, more from Yan Yu's insistence than his own laziness. Any time he tried to help, she shooed him away. Night fell early in the winter. Once darkness came, Yan Yu removed her ugly disguise and swapped her dusty gray coat for a blue blouse dotted with white flowers. She was petite and slender, but her figure still curved in all the right places. Though a bit pale from lack of proper nutrition, her features had all the makings of a true beauty. Late at night, there weren't too many things on Li Yuan's mind. Before long, he moved behind Yan Yu, who was still busy washing dishes, and wrapped his arms around her waist. She let out a playful protest. I'm not done washing yet. Then keep washing, he murmured into her ear. Yan Yu blushed, her body suddenly shivering as though touched by an electric current. She caught her breath in soft gasps and said, You rascal, at least blow out the candle first. Early the next morning, Li Yuan was still in bed, curled up with Yan Yu, when the sound of commotion came from outside. People seemed to be rushing around, chattering noisily. From his arms, Yan Yu lifted her head, a red silk ribbon slipping into view as part of her disheveled underclothes. A hint of pale skin peeked through. What's going on out there? No idea. I'm going to check. Yan Yu wiggled free, stood up right in front of him, and began pulling on her clothes and trousers without a trace of shyness. She hurriedly did up her disguise, using ash and various scraps of cloth to look gray and shapeless. Once she looked a good deal plumper and plainer, she headed out the door. Upon leaving the house, she found she didn't need to ask anybody to know what the fuss was about. A single glance made it obvious. 3 men were carrying a wild boar on bamboo poles into the village. The boar had already been gutted and drained of blood. Its innards had been strung up in the woods as an offering to the mountain gods. Even so, the beast had to be nearly 100 kilograms. 3 grown men could still barely carry it. Sure enough, those 3 men were Bear, Ugly Zhang, and Zhang Nuli. Villagers trailed after them in admiration, some even drooling at the sight. In these hungry times, who could resist the sight of so much pork? Bears really got skills. You said it. This big OL boar has got to have a ton of lard. Hey, Bear, can I join up with you too? He's the best. No wonder everyone calls him Bear. Voices of praise rang out all around, until a sly, taunting tone cut through the crowd. Well now, killing such a huge boar and not sharing with everyone? Don't you think that's a little selfish? Heads turned toward the speaker, Chen heir of the Chen family. He stood with 2 cronies behind him, pushing to the front of the crowd. Some folks here are practically starving, he said, and you 3 are living the good life, eating and drinking your fill. Think you can ignore the rest of us? Ha! Chen heir lifted his hand and swept his gaze over the onlookers, trying to rally them to his side. Just then, Bear abruptly set the boar down, pulled a sharp knife from behind his waist, and ran it along his forearm as if wiping the blade clean. Then he pointed it straight at Chen heir. Beat him up, Bear shouted. Anybody who does gets to take some of this meat. The harder you hit, the more you get. That's a promise from me. Everyone looked at each other in uncertainty. Bear didn't seem flustered. He just plopped himself down on top of the boar, swung his knife, and sliced off a dripping hunk of pork leg. Holding it up high, he hollered, "The first one to take a swing can have this. Know why? Because anyone who fights Chen heir is my brother. And who knows, maybe next time I go hunting, I'll take you along." There was a tense silence. Then, all of a sudden, a few young men grabbed sticks and charged forward. Chen heir barked, "Who dares? Who dares?" But the young men still attacked, crying out that they'd rather follow Bear. The scuffle grew as more people piled in. Chen heir had offended so many in Little Ink Village over the years. Now, with Bear backing them up and the promise of meat, plenty were eager to settle a score. Yenyu, seeing the brawl break out, turned on her heels and hurried back home. She told Li Yuan everything, sounding a little sour about it all. Though she didn't say it outright, Li Yuan could sense the implied comparison. They bagged a huge boar while he only managed a pheasant. He, on the other hand, felt relieved he hadn't joined up with Bear's group. Clearly, they were ambitious and restless. They'd only just formed their hunter alliance and were already going head-to-head with the Chen family. Li Yuan, Yenyu fretted, her eyes darting nervously. Bear took Zhang Nuli and Ugly Zhang under his wing. Aren't you also one of the hunters in the village? Maybe you should join them too. Li Yuan just slipped an arm around her shoulders and said with a grin, "Don't worry yourself with what's going on outside. I know what I'm doing." Yenyu felt a twinge of envy welling up in her eyes. That wild boar weighed a good 100 kilograms, and it was all meat. What a feast! Still, she knew there was no point in comparing. Bear was a hunter who'd even taken down a black bear before. Li Yuan, on the other hand, had once been chased by a wild boar so badly, he was laid up in bed for days. When it came to hunting skills, there was simply no contest. Feeling a bit sour, Yenyu said, "Look at Bear. He's so bold and direct. He just went ahead and pulled together a whole crew to join him. Now, he's become a big name in Little Ink Village, someone who can go toe-to-toe with the Chen family." Hearing that, Li Yuan got annoyed. "Then go marry him." Yenyu froze, gave him a pinch and snapped, "I'm Yenyu, not some fickle flirt. I'm with you. I'm not about to chase after anyone else." She huffed and stormed off, sitting by herself in a corner with her back to him. Li Yuan followed and sat down next to her. But as soon as he did, she scooted away. He slid closer and she inched away again. Finally, he said gently, "Your makeup is still on. Getting this worked up won't do any favors for your looks. Yenyu suddenly flung herself onto the bed and burst into tears. You're the one who said I was thinking of other men. Then you turned around and blamed me. She sobbed so hard her shoulders shook. Li Yuan hadn't expected such an intense reaction. He inched closer and took her hand. She made no move to pull away. Yenyu, he called softly. She kept her face buried in the covers, not saying a word. After calling her a few more times to no response, Li Yuan finally said, If you really want pork, give me some time. I'll hunt a wild boar myself. You're all talk, Yenyu muttered. Like I don't know, you just got lucky with that pheasant. But right after she said it, she regretted it. Sitting up with tears still glistening on her cheeks, she whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I was just mad. You're steady and reliable, much better than other men. Li Yuan pulled her close and said, Then next time I get lucky, I'll bring down a wild boar. She looked at him, felt a pang of guilt, and shook her head. No, I don't want it. I won't eat pork anymore. As long as you're safe, that's enough for me. I don't even like pork. Seeing she had stopped crying, Li Yuan couldn't help but think how Yenyu was much easier to console than the pretty girls from his former life. Li Yuan glanced at his status screen and saw that he had 36 free stat points to add. After tonight, he could bump his archery up another notch. Given that a wild boar's overall strength rating was only around 3-4, he at least needed to learn a proper martial technique and reach the 9th rank threshold in terms of combat power. Only then could he safely hunt wild boars or other ferocious beasts without risking more trouble than he could handle. Figuring it was worth a shot, Li Yuan asked offhandedly, You came all the way here with Yen Mu. Did he ever mention anything about martial arts? Like, where you might get hold of a martial technique? The black market, right? I know. But how am I supposed to get there right now? Huh? You want to practice martial arts? Yenyu suddenly caught his drift. He must have been inspired, maybe even provoked, by Bear's success. So now he wanted to train up to hunt wild boars. Tears still shimmered on her face, but she was already smiling. Li Yuan gave a serious nod. Yes, I do. Yenyu noticed his earnest look and fell silent for a moment. Seeing her deep in thought, Li Yuan perked up. Don't tell me you actually know some martial art? Think carefully. Her eyes flickered with recollection. Now that you mention it, I do remember something. Back then, Yen Mu sent a small manual home, telling my sister and brother-in-law to practice the movements every so often for longevity or something like that. My sister had me give it a try, too, but I didn't notice anything special about it. Could it be a real martial cultivation technique? Li Yuan urged her. Give it a shot. Yenyu hesitated. I barely remember it. Don't laugh if I mess up. With that, she started reciting what she recalled of the mental focus while demonstrating the movements. Her motions were slow but steady, like a reed quivering in the wind. One moment swaying, the next rocking, her arms and palms extending and contracting in a way that vaguely resembled morning radio exercises. Li Yuan followed along. Yenyu explained, It's mostly about breathing, shifting your center of gravity, and using the mind to regulate your condition. It does seem like it could be a martial art. But if it really is, how come my sister and I never got any results from it? They locked the door and practiced together for most of the day. By dusk, Yenyu's cheeks were flushed a lively pink, no doubt helped by the chicken she'd eaten last night and all the exercise today. She looked healthier already. That's all there is to it. If you want, just keep at it on your own. I'm going to cook dinner. Sure. Let's eat early and get to bed early. It'll save on candles. Yenyu answered sweetly, sounding nothing like the woman who'd been crying earlier. In the clay stove, the firewood crackled softly. Yenyu crouched by the stove cooking porridge. Her gaze kept drifting toward the half-bowl of pheasant fat at her side, and the thought of using it made her happy. Yet the moment she recalled that all their emergency funds were gone, a flicker of worry passed through her eyes. Meanwhile, Li Yuan kept practicing the moves Yenyu had shown him, convinced there must be something special about them. He did them over and over, but by the time she called him for dinner, he still hadn't figured anything out. Over their meal, he asked again, "Are you sure you're not mixing anything up?" "I'm not," Yen Yu replied. "That little booklet only had a few movements and a bit of mental training. How could I have gotten it wrong? I told you it's not some advanced cultivation technique. It's just supposed to stretch your muscles and help with overall health." Li Yuan let the matter drop, and the two quietly finished their bowls of porridge. As night fell, soft, intimate sounds of warmth and affection drifted through their small house. Early the next morning, Yen Yu was still nestled in Li Yuan's arms, fast asleep. Li Yuan, however, was already awake and checking his free stat points. It was up to 42 now. He pulled up his skills tab and found advanced archery, then tapped the plus sign 40 times in rapid succession. Advanced archery, 0/40. New, expert archery, 0 out of 80. A rush of experience surged into his mind. It was as though he'd spent countless hours honing his technique, riding on horseback to hunt prey, shooting down enemies, piercing a distant target in front of an awestruck crowd. He remembered sleeping with his bow by his side and waking with it in hand. Through tireless practice and relentless will, he'd broken through to a higher level of skill. Opening his eyes, Li Yuan carefully slipped his arm out from under Yen Yu's head and stretched, feeling a powerful energy coursing through him. His muscles felt firmer, and faint calluses had formed in his left palm and between his right index and middle fingers. True strength, he reflected, had always come from hard work. Unable to hold back his excitement, he jumped out of bed and grabbed his bow. A glance showed a new number beside him, 7-8. He scrolled through his updated status window. Name, Li Yuan. Stat points, 2. Realm, unranked. Techniques, none. Skills, expert archery 0 of 80. Advanced tracking 0 of 40. Divine ability, eternal youth. Equipment slots, locked. Sure enough, his archery skill was at the expert level now. Yet despite feeling much stronger, Li Yuan couldn't help but frown at the 7-8. Something seemed off. Then he realized he was still holding his old makeshift bow. A skilled hunter needed quality gear, and high-grade bows didn't just fall from the sky. "Money, money, money. Everything costs money," he muttered. "We need money for food, to move to a new place, to buy a bow, to purchase a martial cultivation technique." Letting out a sigh, he decided to give Yen Yu's exercise one more try. Maybe he could get lucky and pick up a free technique. Then he'd have breakfast and head into the mountains to hunt. Li Yuan's stirring as he got out of bed woke Yen Yu, who was still tucked under the covers. She watched him practicing that same routine she'd shown him yesterday. She was partly amused and partly worried. Peeking out the window, she noticed the weather looked pretty good, so she hurried to get up as well. They were running low on water at home, so she planned to go to the village well first thing in the morning. After a bit, she warmed up last night's leftovers, put on her makeup, and stuffed a few scraps of cloth into her clothes. Then she looked at Li Yuan and said, "There's some bean porridge in the pot. The pheasant oil is right there. Just mix it in." She took a few steps, then turned back with concern in her voice. "That set of moves really is just for health and fitness. It's not a real martial cultivation technique. Don't get too carried away." "Got it," Li Yuan replied, pausing his practice to glance her way. "You going to fetch water? The water jar's empty, and it hasn't rained these last few days." "You're going alone?" "Of course not. I'll go with Auntie Wang and Fenger. Even if their water jars aren't empty, they'll still tag along if I ask. Nobody goes out on their own these days." Sensing his lingering worry, Yen Yu gave him a reassuring smile. "It's just along the main road. Nothing's going to happen. After all, I used to do this on my own all the time when you weren't around." With that, she lifted a large wooden bucket and headed for the door. It was tiring work. Filling the water jar would take 4 or 5 trips back and forth to the well. Li Yuan was about to continue his practice when he saw Yen Yu's soot-smudged face pop back around the doorframe. She nagged one more time. "I'm telling you, this is just a health routine. It's not a real technique, so don't lose yourself in it." Yeah, I know," he said with a wave of his hand. "I'm just doing it for exercise. not for cultivation. Hearing that, Yen Yu finally seemed at ease. From her point of view, cultivation was something distant and lofty, far beyond her grasp. Her nephew, Yen Mu, had dealt with such things, but that felt like another lifetime ago. Li Yuan, being her husband, seemed equally far removed from it. Once she left, Li Yuan resumed the routine, making sure his movements were precise and paying close attention to his breathing and rhythm. By the time Yen Yu came back on her second trip with water, he'd already finished breakfast, slung his bow across his back, and was ready to head out alongside her. 2 other women stood with her. One was Auntie Wong from next door. The other was a young woman with a fair, radiant complexion named Fenger. Fenger teased, "Hey, it looks like Yen Yu hasn't been living the good life with you, huh?" Li Yuan paused for a moment. "What makes you say that? I remember she used to be so pretty. After she got together with you, her skin got rougher and she's put on weight." Li Yuan hadn't expected her to be so blunt. He straightened his back. "And what about me?" Fenger froze, taken aback by how much broader he looked these days. Standing in the sunlight, he exuded a hint of strength that was oddly captivating. Fenger spat in mock disgust. "So you're hoarding all the good food, huh? You're a big, strapping man, but how come Bear doesn't want you on his team?" Auntie Wong tugged at her sleeve, signaling her to stop. But Fenger huffed and added, "I'm just standing up for Yen Yu, you know?" Yen Yu hurriedly spoke up. "Li Yuan treats me really well." Fenger gave a snort before finally falling silent. At the fork in the road, the 3 women and 1 man split off in different directions. Li Yuan headed for the second ridge, which he'd already visited once before. Familiar with the way, he slipped into the woods without much trouble. Today, though, he wasn't really planning to hunt. He just wanted to scope things out. Thanks to his keen tracking skills, he moved quietly, almost melting into the forest floor. Many of the animals he passed never even noticed him. He made a rough survey of the right side of the second ridge, which lay near a creek. While the outskirts of Little Ink Mountain rarely saw much wildlife, this side of the second ridge turned out to be quite lively. From a high vantage point, Li Yuan even spotted a tiger with drooping eyes and a white forehead prowling in the distance. Hovering over its head was a 5'8". So even a tiger out here isn't really a match for a ranked martial artist? Li Yuan mused, recalling that blade-carrying escort he'd seen before. The escort's combat power of 1920 was so shockingly high that it felt like they lived in a whole different world. Li Yuan couldn't help wondering what those people ate to reach such a level. Shaking off the thought, he continued his survey, taking a good look at the local terrain, water sources, and pathways. He spotted plenty of rabbits, pheasants, and even a few roe deer. The numbers floating above their heads showed 0-1. He also caught sight of a wolf pack of 8, mostly Tube 3. One of them, presumably the alpha, displayed Tube 4. But today, Li Yuan didn't take a single shot. If he kept bringing home fresh game every day, people would start asking questions. Next time, he planned to bring along a cleaver and a lunchbox so he could butcher any animal on the spot and carry the meat home quietly, without anyone being the wiser. By dusk, Li Yuan was on his way back, carrying nothing more than a few bird eggs he'd collected from a nest and tucked safely inside his clothes. His mood was good. From the day's exploring, he realized his strength now rivaled that of the second ridge's reigning king, the tiger. In other words, the place was basically his personal hunting ground. He returned home empty-handed, and several people he passed gave him looks that seemed to say, "Well, that's what we expected." Someone called out, "Pipsqueak. No luck today, huh?" Another person chimed in, "Hey, why don't you just tag along with Bear?" Someone else added, "Hunting's tough. The Chen family is apparently looking for hunting permits. Maybe you should just sell yours." Li Yuan ignored all the chatter and headed home, putting on a face of feigned disappointment. When he arrived, Yen Yu was crouched by the stove, cooking the one and only meal they'd be having that evening. She noticed he'd come back empty-handed but deliberately avoided mentioning bear or wild boars, worried it might spark the urge in her husband to train like mad again. Instead, she simply said, "You're back? Go wash up. Dinner's almost ready." But Li Yuan didn't go wash up. Instead, he sidled over to her. "What are you doing? It's not even dark yet," she muttered. He grinned and pulled out 4 bird eggs from inside his coat. Seeing them, Yen Yu's eyes lit up. "How'd you find those? I thought there weren't any birds left around the outskirts of Little Ink Mountain." "Just got lucky," Li Yuan answered cheekily, placing the 4 eggs, about the size of chicken eggs, on her lap before heading off to train again. Still pleased at the unexpected treat, Yen Yu's face fell the moment she saw him jump back into practice. It's not really a cultivation technique, but he ignored her, too focused on running through the motions. This time, possibly because his body was already stronger, he felt a subtle warmth circulating through his muscles, like a gentle current or a warm spring flowing under his skin. After dinner, he continued practicing. Even when Yen Yu boiled water and asked him to take a bath, he kept going. "Li Yuan," she urged, "hurry up and wash so I can have a turn. We don't have water to spare." Fetching water was such a chore that, unless they were truly filthy, they usually used the same tub of water one after the other. By rights, Yen Yu was the cleaner one of the two, but she doted on Li Yuan so much she wanted him to bathe first. Li Yuan saw right through her and said, "Then let's bathe together." Her cheeks flushed. "How shameless! Hurry up, the water's getting cold." "I'll bathe after you," he insisted. When she hesitated, he reached out and tugged at the sash around her waist, about to strip off her clothes. Yen Yu, both amused and exasperated, cried, all right, I'll go first." Before long, she was lying in the wooden tub, her chin resting on the edge, watching Li Yuan practice. She mumbled, "Hey, why are you so sweet to me?" A moment later, she added, "Stop practicing. It's not real cultivation." And after another pause, "I'm almost done here. Your turn to take your clothes off." Li Yuan continued paying her no mind, fully absorbed in his training. Suddenly, he felt a wave of clarity sweep through him. Glancing at his status window, he noticed a new entry. Name, Li Yuan. Stat points, 2. Realm, unranked. Techniques, new. Return willow technique. Skills, expert archery 0 of 80. Advanced tracking 0 of 40. Divine ability, eternal youth. Equipment slots, locked. He had finally learned the return willow technique. Li Yuan was absolutely overjoyed, beyond thrilled. In fact, did he really manage to pick up a genuine martial cultivation technique just like that? Holy crap, holy crap, holy crap! He couldn't stop muttering under his breath, his excitement written all over his face. Luckily, they were at home where no one else could see him. Still soaking in the wooden tub, Yen Yu suddenly felt a stab of fear at the sight of her husband's almost delirious grin. "Li Yuan?" she called out. Are you all right?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "He's really gone off the deep end this time, hasn't he?" But Li Yuan was beside himself with joy. "I did it! I really did it!" he cried, rushing over to the other side of the tub and leaning in so they were practically face to face, candlelight shimmering off the water. Seeing the manic gleam in his eyes, Yen Yu couldn't hold back her tears. She was terrified that if she tried to argue with him, it might push him over the edge entirely. So she forced a smile through her sobs and said, "Yes, you did it. That's great. So let's not practice any more tonight, okay?" "Why are you crying?" "I'm just so happy," she lied. "My man's finally standing on his own. How could I not cry tears of joy?" "Wah!" Li Yuan didn't suspect a thing. As soon as she finished bathing, he quickly stripped down, slipped into the tub himself, scrubbed off the day's grime, then dried off and climbed under the covers. He saw Yen Yu lying with her back to him, shoulders trembling as she quietly wept. Gently, he tugged her around to face him. "I'm not going crazy. I really did manage it." "Sure, you did. Absolutely," she mumbled, careful not to provoke him. "How would I even know if you've really learned anything?" She and her sister and brother-in-law had practiced these moves for ages with no effect. And yet here was her husband, claiming he'd mastered them in just 2 days? "Yeah, right. Not crazy, sure." Noticing her doubt, Li Yuan started to put his clothes back on so he could hop out of bed and show her a quick demonstration. But he hadn't finished buttoning when she grabbed him by the arm. "What are you doing? Don't go!" She looked genuinely alarmed, as though he might do something wild in the middle of the night. He instinctively tried to shake her off but found her grip was surprisingly tight. "I promise, I'm not going crazy. Just let me show you a quick form. It'll prove I'm telling the truth. Then, if you finish one set, you'll come back to bed and sleep?" Yen Yu asked with a raised eyebrow. Li Yuan nodded. "Right?" Only then did she let go of him. Eager to prove himself, Li Yuan jumped out of bed and assumed his stance. Now that the return willow technique was officially showing on his status window, he had a clearer sense of its foundational practice. Apparently, this status window could record and refine even a half-baked attempt, as long as he performed the moves seriously. He closed his eyes and started punching, his body swaying like a willow in the wind, soft and pliant, flowing in time with an inner current. Beneath his skin, he could sense a warm wave of energy pulsing through his muscles, making him feel stronger. A quick sideways glance told him his combat power was still 1-2, but he wasn't worried. This was only the beginning. Once he fully mastered the technique, his combat power would definitely rise. Beside the bed, Yen Yu lay watching him with a deepening frown. "You're really insisting this isn't some sort of delusional obsession?" Because to her, those punches didn't look like much of anything special. After about half a stick of incense's time, Li Yuan finished the form and let out a cleansing breath, feeling both invigorated and too wired to sleep. Clapping eagerly, Yen Yu exclaimed with forced cheer, "Wow, you really did it!" Only then did he climb back into bed. Still brimming with energy, he slipped his arms around her from behind. In the darkness, her soft, shy murmurs soon rose into the night. The next day, while Yen Yu stayed home to wash their bedding, Li Yuan once again slung his bow over his shoulder and headed to Little Ink Mountain. He had scouted the right side of the second ridge the previous day but hadn't finished exploring, so he planned to continue. He figured it would take 2 more days to completely map out the right side, and probably 6 to survey the entire mountain. He wasn't interested in hunting large game just yet, or even small animals. He was content instead to focus on studying the terrain and the local wildlife. Still, on the way back, whenever he spotted a bird's nest, he'd grab a few eggs to bring home. On the 3rd day, Li Yuan climbed the mountain with a bamboo basket on his back. Inside was a burlap sack and inside that, a lunchbox. He casually hunted a hare, quickly gutted it, and left the smelly entrails hanging on a nearby tree. Then he severed the head and dropped it at the tree's base. Moving to a small mountain spring, he rinsed the now headless rabbit, stuffed it into his lunchbox, then placed everything back into the sack and stowed it in his basket. On his way out of the second ridge, he noticed a small wolf pack gathered around the spot where he'd discarded the rabbit's innards. The rabbit's head was already gone. The wolves gathered at the base of the tree, howling and eyeing the entrails that dangled from a branch, hungry but unable to reach. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in from the distance, and the drooping-eyed, white-forehead tiger came bounding over. The wolf pack quickly shifted positions to make way for it. With just a few nimble movements, the tiger climbed the tree, light as a feather. Snatching the entrails in its jaws, it gave them a toss and then bit down, devouring them on the spot. Meanwhile, Li Yuan headed home with his lunchbox and secretly boiled the rabbit with Yen Yu before the two of them split it for dinner. From the point of view of the villagers, Li Yuan had gone several days without bagging anything worthwhile. So on the 4th day, when he openly brought home a single pheasant, passers-by teased him. "Hey, Pipsqueak, lucky find today, huh? Guess you finally had some good fortune." Li Yuan just smiled and paid them no mind. Back at home, they now had a little meat on the table, but their stash of grain was getting dangerously low. And they were nearly out of copper coins too. Yen Yu wanted to earn a bit of money by helping neighbors fetch water or gather firewood, but Li Yuan outright refused. If anything happened to her, he'd never forgive himself. So they talked it over and ended up trading half of the pheasant to Auntie Wang next door in exchange for some grain. Auntie Wang's husband worked in a restaurant in the county town, so he could at least bring home a bit of money. Grain there was cheaper than in the village, and he'd sometimes pick up a few extra provisions on his way back. Meat, on the other hand, was expensive to buy on the open market, so swapping poultry between families turned out to be a fair deal for everyone. On the 5th day, Bear led his 2 companions up the mountain, while a crowd gathered at the mountain entrance. Although it was a year of famine, with people starving in many places, the government wasn't completely powerless yet. Without a proper hunting permit, regular folks didn't dare enter the mountain. If someone snitched on you, you'd at least get a beating or be thrown in jail, maybe even lose your life if it escalated. Both county officials and local rogues alike were well aware of how easily poor commoners could be accused of banditry just so someone else could claim credit for catching criminals. The prison was already full of people who'd been labeled as bandits. Spotting Bear, Li Yuan quietly kept his distance. Later that evening, Bear and his 2 followers came out of the woods with yet another wild boar slung on a pole, along with a couple of pheasants. The crowd at the entrance cheered. "Follow Bear, and you won't go hungry. Bear, you're amazing." In the middle of the commotion stood Fenger, that fair-skinned young woman with a lively sparkle in her eyes. She gazed at Bear in open admiration, joining in the cheers. Bear's gaze swept across the crowd, landing on her for a moment. She blushed and ducked her head. Meanwhile, off to the side, Chen, heir of the Chen family, and a few local bullies ground their teeth in jealousy. But they didn't dare go near, only glowering from a distance. On the 6th day, Yan Yu and Auntie Wang went to fetch Fenger for their daily trip to the well. They called out to her for a while, but no one answered. Suddenly, the door swung open, and out walked a man tugging on his pants. He wasn't tall, but his solid build and swagger made him look every bit as tough as he felt. It was none other than Bear. Yan Yu and Auntie Wang quickly stepped aside. Once he was gone, they hurried into the house. There, they saw Fenger still pulling on her clothes, her fair skin half exposed and her face filled with satisfaction. Auntie Wang frowned. "Girl, what are you doing messing around with him?" "He's amazing," Fenger replied matter-of-factly. Auntie Wang reminded her. "But he already has a wife." A dreamy look flitted across Fenger's eyes. Lifting her chin, she said brightly, "He promised he'd marry me. I've made up my mind. Even if I have to be his mistress, I'm staying by his side." Yan Yu asked, "Then why isn't he taking you away with him?" With a coy little quiver in her voice, Fenger answered, "He said the time isn't right, but he told me to wait for him, and I'm willing to wait." Yan Yu, seeing her friend in such a state, huffed angrily. "How can you be so gullible?" Fenger bristled at that. She looked like she might slam the table and jump to her feet at any moment. But then she rolled her eyes and gave Yan Yu a mocking smile. "What, jealous? He's a lot more capable than your husband." Those words set Yan Yu off. She stepped forward. "Fenger, what did you say? My man is useless? Where are you getting that?" Fenger sneered. "Oh please, everyone knows." Seeing the smug, contemptuous look on the face of Fenger, Yan Yu was so furious she stormed out on the spot. When night fell, Yan Yu lay in her husband's arms, chattering away about all the little dramas that had unfolded that day. Li Yuan listened with genuine interest. After all, in a village with no electricity, no phones, and no internet, there were only so many ways to pass the time once darkness set in. If they ever moved to the county town, settled by Silver Creek, and saved up a bit of money, maybe then they could head out at night for a drink or two. But that was nothing more than a distant dream right now. "Fenger's such a fool," Yan Yu grumbled. "He's obviously just stringing her along, and yet she goes and gives herself to him. All day today, she was off in La La Land, saying she'd wait for him, that she wants to marry him even if it means being a mistress. Ugh, it makes me so mad. Didn't you used to say Bear was pretty decent?" Li Yuan teased. "He's too restless," Yan Yu muttered. "He's not someone you can settle down with. And what about me? You?" She started to say something about how it'd be nice if he could bring home more game. But then she remembered how she'd once goaded him into training obsessively, nearly driving him to madness. Quickly, She changed course, pressing herself against him. "You're wonderful. I'm especially fond of you," she said softly. The long night wore on. Eventually, Yen Yu fell asleep, exhausted. Li Yuan lay contentedly beside her. If only they didn't have to worry about where their next meal was coming from. He actually liked this simple life. Before he'd crossed over to this world, he'd been a butcher. Where could he have ever found a thoughtful, caring wife like Yen Yu? Outside, a bitter winter wind rattled the bamboo gate with a piercing creak-creak. Strangely, that only made the little house feel more peaceful. Li Yuan recalled what Yen Yu had said earlier that day and felt a wave of relief. He had to thank Ugly Zhang. If not for him, he might have actually believed Bear's sincerity and joined his little squad. Clearly, Bear was not just bold but reckless. After only a few short days of success, he was already running around fooling with other women. Li Yuan shook his head and pulled Yen Yu closer, drifting off to sleep. Over the next few days, life continued quietly. Li Yuan avoided both Bear and Chen Er. He went to the mountain at intervals, swapping between bringing home bird eggs, boxed meat, and small game like pheasants or rabbits. To the outside world, it looked like he only managed to catch something every couple of days, and it was always small, 1 or 2 kilograms of meat at best. No one bothered questioning him. In the meantime, news from the county seat arrived, plastered over the village board. Monk Pan has been beheaded. He had met a swift end, just like that, with no last-minute twists to save him. In the village, Kai Hua heard the news, bowed toward the county in silent respect, and said nothing more. In the blink of an eye, more than half a month had passed since Li Yuan had awakened the return willow technique. Early one morning, Li Yuan opened his eyes and glanced at his status window. Name: Li Yuan. Stat points: 104. Realm: unranked. Techniques: Return Willow Technique 1 out of 100. Skills: Expert Archery 0 of 80. Advanced Tracking 0 of 40. Divine Ability: Eternal Youth. Equipment slots: locked. He had accumulated a total of 104 stat points. Heaven rewarded hard work. All that effort in bed had finally paid off. Carefully, he slid his arm out from under Yen Yu's head, got dressed, and stepped into the courtyard. Now it was time to allocate some points. Focusing on the Return Willow technique, he eagerly tapped the little plus sign, pouring in the points he'd earned. Instantly, it was as though a flood of memories streamed through his mind, countless days of painstaking practice. He saw himself working outside during the day to earn money for nourishing foods, then training hard under the moonlight at night, unwavering no matter how many times he failed. And at last, the breakthrough came. A rush of power welled up inside him, unlike anything he'd felt before. He sensed a hot surge through his muscles, like a scurrying little mouse. It didn't appear to be a stream of qi, but intensely rich blood that brimmed with vigor. A warm, soothing sensation spread through Li Yuan's entire body, as though his bones, skin, and muscles were soaking in a hot spring. If only there was more of this blood, that would feel even better, Li Yuan remarked wistfully. Suddenly, he remembered something Yen Yu once said. Pig's blood nourishes pigs. Dragon's blood nourishes dragons. Perhaps this special blood coursing through him was the essence behind becoming a ranked martial artist. In other words, one's power stemmed from that special blood. Next, Li Yuan noticed his muscles swelling, solid as rock. He walked into the courtyard, grabbed hold of a large boulder with one hand, and lifted it without any effort. After raising and lowering it a few times, he still didn't feel the slightest bit of strain. A quick glance at the floating numbers beside him showed 9, 10, and that was without holding a bow. He'd been at 1, 2 before. Awesome, awesome! Feeling delighted, Li Yuan hurried back into the house and grabbed his old bow from the wall. With the bow in hand, the numbers jumped to 24, 25. That already surpassed the blade-carrying escort from the county authority he'd seen previously. Meanwhile, Li Yuan's status window naturally updated as well. Name: Li Yuan. Stat points: 5. Realm: Rank 9 Flesh Refinement. Techniques: Return Willow Technique 100 out of 100. Skills: Expert Archery 0 of 80. Advanced Tracking 0 of 40. Divine Ability. Eternal Youth. Equipment slots. Locked. 9th rank. Li Yuan murmured. So once my cultivation realm increased, my combat power with a bow jumped as well. Makes sense that holding a bow boosts my numbers further. He couldn't help feeling slightly disappointed that his return willow technique appeared to have maxed out. Still, it was a minor worry. From today on, he declared, I can hunt openly again. Standing in the morning sun, Li Yuan brimmed with excitement. Of course, being strong didn't mean showing all his cards. It was better to hide 7 parts and reveal 3, as they say, to ensure his own safety. Inside the house, Yen Yu heard his cheerful laughter. Worried, she knelt by the window and cracked it open a bit to peek at him. Oh no, he's having another episode, she murmured. That small sound was enough for Li Yuan to sense her. He turned and said, Yen Yu, starting today, we'll have all the meat we want. Without waiting for her reply, he grabbed a burlap sack, slipped a hatchet behind his back, and strode out the door. His overall combat power was now 24-25, and Bear with his hunting dog was about 4-6. It should be safe to pretend I'm about as strong as that, right? Li Yuan remarked to himself. The second ridge. By now, Li Yuan knew this place like the back of his hand. He had no intention of upstaging Bear, so he bypassed a few wild boars before venturing deeper in. There, he spotted a roe deer. Swiftly, he bent the bow and knocked a stone as ammo. Creak, creak, creak. The crude bow groaned, nearly splitting in two under the strain. Li Yuan had to ease off a bit, or else the bow would snap. Hearing the odd noise, the roe deer cocked its head curiously, trying to see what was causing it. Right then, Li Yuan let go. Whoosh! The stone shot forward, smacking the deer square in the forehead. With a dull thud, it dropped, twitched a few times, and fell still. Li Yuan rushed up in just a few strides, hefted the animal, and stuffed it into his sack. He gave it a quick estimate, just over 15 kilograms. Good enough. On his way back to the village, the path seemed strangely quiet. Those who passed him eyed the bulging sack without cracking jokes. A few offered curt remarks in odd tones. Pipsqueak, what did you bag today? Looks pretty big. Think you could spare a little? My family's about to go hungry. We're from the same village, aren't we? You know, the mountain's bounty is for everyone. Before, Li Yuan would occasionally bring home a small pheasant or rabbit, weighing maybe 1 or 2 kilograms, and nobody bothered him about it. But now, with a big, bulging sack slung over his shoulder, a few local troublemakers had taken notice. He was just about to walk off when 2 idle teenage boys from the village jumped out and blocked his way. Li Yuan tried going left. They shifted left. He veered right. They blocked his path again. Clearly, they weren't letting him pass. He stopped. One of the teens lifted his chin and said, Pipsqueak, share some. You've got so much. No way you can finish all that at home. Another one chimed in, we're all from the same neighborhood. You'd look bad if you didn't share. I don't need much. Just give me 1.5 kilos. Others, who had been hovering a short distance away, now gathered around. Pipsqueak, I'm out of rice at home. You wouldn't want your uncle going hungry, would you? One villager said, playing the pity card. If you want to keep the peace, you'd better split the spoils. One more villager stepped up, puffing up his chest and glaring at Li Yuan. Finally, another villager walked up, acting like a self-appointed elder. Look at you, all grown up. Let your dear old uncle step in and settle this fairly. Li Yuan cut him off before he could finish. That middle-aged man paused, then said, Everyone's here, so we should all get a share. Just give us 13 kilograms. That's not too much to ask, right? Li Yuan gave a cold laugh. The man continued, You and your wife are just 2 people. 2 kilos of meat is all you need. Why be so greedy? Somebody else agreed. He's right, Pipsqueak. Don't be too stingy. A crowd had formed around him. Li Yuan glanced off to the side and noticed an old wooden stump. He pointed and said, Let's settle this by arm wrestling. If you beat me, you get 1.5 kilos of meat. The teens blocking his path instantly lit up. A certain middle-aged man looked worried. Another boy whispered something into his ear, and the man suddenly beamed. "We'll wait till his arm's tired, then have another go." "Huh?" Li Yuan inwardly smirked. Another teen raised his voice and laughed. "Remember, Pipsqueak, you said it yourself. Everyone here is a witness." Without more talk, Li Yuan hefted his sack and walked over to the old stump by the village road. He settled down as if he had all the time in the world, then said, "All right, who's first?" "I'll go," one of the brash teens shouted. He dropped down beside Li Yuan, elbow braced against the stump, eyes fixed on the hunter. "Just so we're clear, I get to pick which cut of meat I take. I don't want you handing me scraps." Everyone crowded around to watch. People who hadn't shown any interest before joined in once they heard the commotion. After a few quick explanations, all eyes were on Li Yuan. Some with glee, some with sympathy, and still others were silently planning their own turn at the stump. Li Yuan cast a calm glance around the crowd. Most of these people were at best 0-1, while the young man in front of him was more like 1-2, a crane among chickens. "Let's begin," Li Yuan said flatly. The youth let out a sinister laugh. "Bagging a big catch makes you think you're some hotshot now? Feeling cocky?" The two locked hands. Someone on the side counted down, 3, 2, 1. Before the countdown was even over, the youth threw his weight into the match, hoping to slam Li Yuan's arm onto the stump. In his mind, Li Yuan was just a shut-in good-for-nothing who hadn't even been recruited by Bear. Surely, a single forceful push would crush him, maybe even leave him with a bruised hand. But he felt as though he'd slammed into solid iron. Li Yuan's arm didn't budge an inch, and the youth's own wrist began to go numb. He paused in disbelief and muttered, "Huh, you do have a little strength." Then he tried again, straining harder and harder until his face turned beet red. He peered left and right to see if Li Yuan was pulling some trick. But all he saw under Li Yuan's clothes was thick, iron-hard muscle, solid, full, and brimming with raw power. Realizing nothing was working, the teen went silent and summoned every ounce of strength he had. Still, Li Yuan's arm didn't budge, and Li Yuan himself sat there, casually upright and unmoved. Those who had been watching for a laugh began to sense something was off. The chatter faded as people realized something serious was happening. Those at the fringes of the crowd who couldn't see well kept asking, "Is it over yet?" At that moment, Li Yuan suddenly tightened his grip. Crack, crack, crack. The youth felt his hand clamped in a vice, pinned in place. Pain surged through him. He tried desperately to pull away, but Li Yuan wouldn't let go. Rage and terror flooded his eyes as he gasped, "Let go!" It felt like his fingers were caught in an iron trap. The agony was overwhelming, and he let out a shrill, pig-like scream. "Let go, let go!" Everyone jumped. The entire place fell silent, and all eyes darted to the stump. Then came a heavy thud, like a massive drumstick slamming into the crowd's hearts. Everyone froze in place, too startled to utter a word. Only the boy's wails broke the silence. Tears and snot streamed down his face as his arm lay crushed against the wooden block, swollen and unrecognizable. "Quit crying. It's not permanent." Li Yuan glanced down at him. He lifted his eyes and looked around. "Next. Who's up?" No one dared answer. Li Yuan's gaze landed on another teen who'd blocked his way before. "Weren't you the one who asked for 1.5 kilos of meat?" The boy's face went pale. Before he could finish, Li Yuan sprang up like a raging ape. In a single step, he closed the distance, seized the teen's right hand, and yanked him forward. Li Yuan gave a sharp tug. The teen felt as though he'd been slapped by a bear. He flew forward and landed right beside the stump. "Pipsqueak, I'm not wrestling anymore. You think you can just back out?" Li Yuan frowned. The teen looked up at the fearsome hunter. Li Yuan's fierce eyes, combined with the sight of the youth still rolling on the ground in agony, made him feel like he was staring at a man who had the raw power of a bear trapped in human skin. His bravado collapsed in an instant. I was wrong. I really don't want to do this anymore. You did nothing wrong, Li Yuan countered. He had no intention of letting the kid off so easily. Strength alone was worthless if you didn't show people you were willing to use it. Today, he planned to teach the village a lesson. He had the right to bring home bigger prey, the right to eat more meat. Pipsqueak. No, big bro, I'm sorry. I was wrong. The teen's legs started shaking. In these parts, if you ruined your hand, your entire life could come crashing down. Li Yuan's expression remained calm. Tell me exactly what you did wrong. The teen hesitated, too scared to speak. Li Yuan flexed his fingers. Ah! Please. The teen forced a grin, sounding nothing like his earlier self. We just thought you were weak, so we tried to bully you into sharing. We didn't mean anything else. If we'd known you were so strong, we never would have dared. He mustered a flattering smile. How'd you get so tough? Teach me. Let me tag along with you. My name's Xiao Hu. Li Yuan let go of his hand. Xiao Hu immediately spun around and glared at the bystanders. What are you all staring at? You saw it, didn't you? My big bro isn't so easy to bully. Everyone hurriedly scattered, especially the so-called elders who had been trying to play the seniority card. They bolted in fear. Bullies only thrived when they were sure their target couldn't fight back. Once someone displayed strength, they would all run for cover. Big bro, Xiao Hu went on. I've always looked up to real heroes. You look like one. Li Yuan asked, Aren't you running with the Chen family? Xiao Hu shook his head. Those lowlifes? No way. We were thinking of joining Bear. But he wanted nothing to do with a bunch of petty hooligans. If I had half your skills, my life wouldn't be such a mess. You mean you and your friends? Li Yuan pressed. Yeah, Xiao Hu said. A few guys my age who hang out together. Suddenly Li Yuan asked, Do you have any connections at the black market? Xiao Hu's eyes lit up. I do. My cousin has a stall there. But he's a ranked martial artist now, and he won't get me involved. The black market's complicated. Every stall's got its own turf. Li Yuan nodded. If you come by later, I'll give you 1.5 kilos of venison. No charge. But there's no need for you to tag along with me. With that, he slung his sack over his shoulder and headed home. He'd only gotten halfway back when he saw Yen Yu in the distance, gripping a wooden laundry paddle. She was rushing over with a panicked look, obviously having heard he'd been cornered. Li Yuan broke into a smile and strode toward her. In the eyes of the villagers, Li Yuan's sudden transformation was startling, like a timid rabbit turning into a hulking human bear overnight. In reality, he had only displayed a power level of roughly 3-4, on par with Bear. But in this village, 3-4 was already more than enough to hold onto his own catch and protect his right to enjoy his spoils. Still, just having meat wasn't enough. Li Yuan also wanted to make money by selling meat and pelts. The problem was, if he sold them to shady traders who knew how much he'd be cheated out of. That was why, earlier, he had asked that young hooligan Xiao Hu about the black market. Unfortunately, Xiao Hu wasn't much help in that department. Even so, Li Yuan ended up learning 2 important things. One was that the black market was made up of stalls, and each stall was its own little territory. The second was that registered, or rather ranked, martial artists were allowed to set up shop in the black market. Li Yuan had dealt out punishment, then handed Xiao Hu 1.5 kilos of venison, a carrot after the stick, making quite an impression. Now, Xiao Hu might keep him updated on any black market news he picked up. Just as Li Yuan was turning these thoughts over in his mind, Yen Yu came hurtling toward him, brandishing a laundry paddle like a lone warrior rushing in to rescue a condemned man. She grew visibly calmer when she saw her husband was safe and sound. Li Yuan, if we lost the meat, it's fine. At least you're okay. Losing the meat wouldn't be fine, Li Yuan said, voice low. Yen Yu couldn't help but roll her eyes. You want to run back there and fight for it? I heard you got cornered. I'm glad you're safe this time, but sometimes there's just nothing you can do. Let's go home first. Okay? Sure. Let's head home. Li Yuan exhaled slowly and then, with a small grin, added, Not even an ounce of meat went missing. Once we're home, I'll make sure you get your fill. He gave the bulging sack a little shake. Look at this bag. Does it look like anything's missing? Yen Yu stared at the sack, baffled. Li Yuan didn't explain, only saying, "We'll talk once we're back." Though she was puzzled, Yen Yu kept her laundry paddle in hand, standing guard by his side all the way home. Back home, Li Yuan untied the sack and hefted out a large roe deer. He dragged over a small wooden stool and settled down in the courtyard. Holding out a hand, he said, "Yen Yu, bring me a knife. I'm gonna gut and skin this thing right here." Seeing such a hefty deer, Yen Yu felt a rush of both joy and confusion. But at his words, she quickly protested, "Shouldn't we do this inside? The smell is going to be pretty strong," Li Yuan replied. "You still want to sleep in there tonight, right?" Yen Yu pursed her lips in curiosity, then finally stomped her foot and came closer. "What exactly happened? How'd you manage to keep the meat when they tried to rob you?" Li Yuan glanced at her. "Because your husband suddenly got stronger, and now they're too scared to touch me." "Seriously? You expect me to believe that?" Yen Yu asked, doubtful. "By tomorrow, you'll believe it," Li Yuan said confidently. Night fell. Whatever happened outside, Li Yuan paid it no mind. Tonight, he and Yen Yu feasted to their heart's content. They were short on seasonings and wine, but rendering the fat and sprinkling a little salt was all they needed to make the venison delicious. There was a faint gaminess to the meat, but for people who rarely ate meat anyway, it was nothing they couldn't handle or even notice. Later that night, after a bout of lovemaking, Yen Yu lay limp as a rag doll, curled at Li Yuan's side. Her long, slender hands roamed over his body, pinching here and pressing there. In a drowsy, languid voice, she murmured, "You really have bulked up. I guess I'm starting to believe you've gotten stronger." Suddenly, a thought seemed to occur to her. "Wait, you actually mastered that technique?" "I told you before," Li Yuan replied. "You didn't believe me, but we can't let anyone else find out, so keep it quiet." Yen Yu stiffened slightly. Although still struggling to wrap her head around it, she managed to say, "Do you really think I'm that naive?" Li Yuan gently ran a hand down her shoulder. "From now on, you'll have all the meat you want. Anything other wives might have, I want you to have too." Yen Yu's body trembled with warmth, her heart flooding with sweetness. She'd once said something similar in the past, and now he was saying it back. "Li Yuan," she whispered softly, snuggling closer. "I really love you." Dawn arrived. When Li Yuan woke up, he was amazed to see the stat points he gained for the night had gone from 6 to 7. Could it be that happiness was boosting his stats? "Yen Yu," he murmured, leaning in to give his lovely wife a light kiss. Half asleep, Yen Yu wriggled in closer like a child, wrapped herself around him, and mumbled, "Just a little longer. All right? Let's get a bit more rest." By mid-morning, the two of them were up, sitting across from each other, ladling porridge to go with leftover venison when the sound of many footsteps reached them from afar. Yen Yu peered out the window and saw a crowd headed their way. On the left side, Qian was in the lead. On the right side stood Bear, and a few hooligans trailed behind, including that scrawny troublemaker from before. It was quite a procession. Stricken, Yen Yu nearly sprang up to lock the door. But as soon as she moved, Li Yuan's large hand came to rest on her shoulder. "Don't worry. Stay inside. I'll handle this." With that, he walked to the wall, slung his sturdy bow over his back, and picked up his quiver. He casually emptied out the small stones that were inside, letting them clatter onto the bed, then stepped outside. Li Yuan made for the wicker gate. At the same time, the two groups and their hangers-on converged on the same spot. When he reached the gate, they halted. Sweeping his gaze over the youths, Li Yuan caught sight of Xiao Hu. "I told you to come get some meat. Why'd you bring all these people?" Li Yuan noticed Xiao Hu's downcast expression. "Big bro," the youth said miserably. "They came to me for information about you and I." Before he could finish, Qian, who was leading one of the groups, let out a hearty laugh. "Li Yuan, I clearly misjudged you. Who would have guessed you were a real hero all along?" I'll skip the pleasantries and tell you outright. My big brother works as a steward at the fortune trading company. He took our fourth and fifth brothers with him. The third wanted to be a hunter so didn't go, and I'm just used to a free and easy life. Listen, if you come with me, I guarantee I can recommend you to my big brother. Think about it. Once you join the trading company, it'll be a lot better than squatting here in this tiny village. Li Yuan took note. It was obvious that within a small settlement like Little Ink Village, both Bear and Chen Er were vying for local influence. Now that a new strong fighter like him had appeared, of course they were going to fight over him. Bear let out a cold snort. Don't listen to his nonsense. Have you forgotten what Chen San tried to pull? Have you forgotten how Monk Pan died? It's true we haven't treated you so well in the past, but that changes now. You've got real skill. Come with me. There'll be good wine, good meat, and women if you want 'em. Everything I've got, you get too. What could be better? Turning to Bear, Li Yuan inclined his head in a show of respect. Bear, I told you before I don't have big ambitions. I just want to hunt, live a quiet life, and spend my days in peace with my wife. That's all I've ever hoped for. Bear's face darkened. Chen Er stepped in with a smirk. Then you should come with me. Join the fortune trading company's caravans, and you'll be living the high life for sure. Li Yuan shook his head. Chen Er's smile froze. Then he said with a hint of menace in his voice, Li Yuan, you may be a tough one, but in Little Ink Village, you have to pick a side. If you're not siding with me, then you must be siding with him. Li Yuan shut his eyes for a moment, then strode forward. Both groups looked on in puzzlement as he stopped at a fork in the path, pointing toward two old poplar trees growing side by side. He picked up two pigeon egg-sized stones from the ground, placed each one on a branch in either poplar, and then stepped back. All right, I'll fire 2 arrows. If I miss the stone on the left tree, I'll go with Bear. If I miss the stone on the right tree, I'll go with Chen Er. Let heaven itself decide. Bear and Chen Er glanced at the poplars. The distance was well over 100 paces, and the stones were tiny. Hitting them would be no easy feat, Chen Er asked. What if you miss both? Then I'll shoot again, Li Yuan replied. We'll keep going until there's a clear result. But if I manage to hit both stones, that'll mean heaven wants me to stand with neither of you. Sound fair? Bear stood silent for a moment, then grunted his assent. Fine. If you can hit both at that range, I've got no more to say. Agreed, Chen Er added. Let heaven decide. Inside the house, Yen Yu was peering nervously through the window. Seeing 2 groups squabbling over her husband, she realized his talk last night had been genuine. Still, her heart pounded. Her almond-shaped eyes were wide, her hands clenched tight. Can he really do it? She wondered. Oh, Li Yuan, you'd better not miss. Crack, crack, crack. The wooden bow groaned as though it might snap at any moment. Li Yuan's arm muscles flexed and swelled as he drew back the bowstring, revealing just how much bigger and stronger he was than the average man. Solid as iron, with no hint of weakness. Bear and Chen Er, who were both watching closely, couldn't help but feel a chill of apprehension. That very morning, they had pried some information out of Xiao Hu. They'd guessed that Li Yuan was a hidden powerhouse. And now, seeing him in action, they realized he was even more formidable than they'd imagined. Li Yuan released the first arrow with a sharp thrum. It streaked toward the left poplar tree. He didn't bother to watch its flight. Only the distant shout from a bystander confirmed his aim. He hit it. He actually hit it. At this, Bear's face darkened, while Chen Er allowed himself a thin smile. If Li Yuan hit the stone on the left, that meant Bear was out of luck. Now only 2 outcomes remained. Either Li Yuan missed the stone on the right and went with Chen Er, or he hit both stones and helped neither side. Smirking, Chen Er called out, Li Yuan, you could always accidentally miss the second one. Come with me, and this very afternoon I'll bring you a beautiful concubine. You'll live like a king. 2 women by your side. He was upping the ante and trying to distract Li Yuan at the same time. But Li Yuan ignored him. His right hand deftly plucked a second arrow from the quiver, knocked it, drew back, and loosed with a whistle. Thwack! The arrow flashed across the sky, striking the tiny stone perched in the branches of the right poplar. A split second later, the stone went flying, and the arrow sailed on another dozen paces before dropping to the ground. Qian stood there, dumbfounded, as the air fell silent. Then Li Yuan's laughter broke the hush. Ha ha ha! Both shots landed. Guess the heavens have decided I won't be joining either of you. Left arm still lowered, Li Yuan stood with a quiet power. To the onlookers, this usually unremarkable youth now radiated an imposing energy, like a sheer mountainside looming overhead. His gaze swept over Bear and Qian. For a moment, they tried to meet his eyes, but neither could hold his stare. Bear was the first to speak. He broke into a hearty laugh and clapped his hands. Li Yuan, you really are something. I concede. With that, he waved a hand at his men. Let's go. And then he turned and strode away the same way he had come. Qian clicked his tongue at Li Yuan. In truth, he was quite satisfied with the outcome. He hadn't really expected Li Yuan to join the Qian family. His main goal had been to sabotage Bear's recruitment efforts. Now that it was done, he simply said, Li Yuan, farewell. The grand procession that had arrived so pompously dispersed just as quickly, disappearing without a trace in moments. Li Yuan lowered his bow. He had only shown about 30% of his true ability. This level of skill would make Bear think, if I'm in top form, I could do that too. This worked out perfectly. Bear wouldn't feel too threatened, yet would think twice before causing Li Yuan trouble. From now on, Li Yuan could bring home game openly without worrying about being harassed. He was about to turn back when Xiao Hu and a few other youths came over, their faces filled with admiration. Big bro, your skill. Today we finally witnessed the real deal. Xiao Hu gushed, sounding downright eager to please. Li Yuan cut him off. I'll give you the meat first like I promised. Yes, yes, of course. Xiao Hu hunched his shoulders and followed Li Yuan. Spotting Yan Yu peering through the window, he hurried to bow and greet her. Sis. He barely spoke the word before receiving a swift flick on the forehead. Li Yuan's eyes were cold. Who said you could call her that? Xiao Hu let out a bitter laugh. Big bro, please let us follow you. We're not just looking for free food. We've got some supplies stored at home. It's just that here in Little Ink Village, we're like stray cats and dogs. Sure, we caused some trouble, but we're nobodies. You're a real hero, and after seeing you show your skill just now, we're all convinced. Won't you be our boss? Whatever you tell us to do, we'll do. Li Yuan stared at him, then turned and walked back inside, returning moments later with a butcher knife. He sliced off a chunk of venison and tossed it to Xiao Hu. Catching it firmly in both hands, Xiao Hu heard Li Yuan say, That's 1.5 kilos. Take it. If you find a way into the black market, come see me again. And next time you talk, use your head. There's already Bear and the Chen family in this village. If I take you all in, it'd look like I'm challenging them, wouldn't it? Xiao Hu paused at a loss for words. Now leave, Li Yuan ordered. Xiao Hu took off in a hurry, carefully closing the wicker gate behind him on the way out. Li Yuan went back inside. Yan Yu had stepped away from the window and was now gazing at him with wide, wondering eyes, her hands twisting the hem of her blue dress in nervous excitement. He let out a big laugh and swept her into his arms. She gave him a gentle tap on the shoulder, speaking with a hint of reproach. When did you get so amazing? Li Yuan teased. Back when you thought I'd lost my mind. Yan Yu fell silent. What was there to complain about? He hadn't kept any secrets from her. She just hadn't believed him. Yan Yu's initial surprise quickly turned into playful frustration. So you're this skilled now? Great. Why don't you head out this afternoon and bring home a new concubine while you're at it? She teased. Not a chance, Li Yuan replied. I'm more than content with just you. She blushed. Could you at least phrase that more nicely? Must you be so blunt? Before Li Yuan crossed over, he'd been a butcher. Although he used to consider himself a bit of a literary type, becoming a butcher never turned him into some poetic soul who spouted flowery lines while wielding a cleaver. It mostly just left him feeling self-conscious at reunions. I'm basically a rogue. How else am I supposed to talk? She gave him a skeptical look. A rogue? Since when? You never seemed that crude to me. Li Yuan raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you don't know? Huh. She froze for a second. Then her face went scarlet as she thought back to their more intimate moments. She slapped his arm gently. You're terrible. Li Yuan let out a hearty laugh, then set her down. Anyway, I've wasted enough time. I should head to the mountains. We still have plenty of venison left. True, but I'd like to bag another roe deer today and sell it tomorrow. He picked up a hatchet. We're running low on grain, remember? Yen Yu rolled her eyes. You make it sound so easy. Like all the game in Little Ink Mountain are your personal livestock. They basically are. Li Yuan answered matter-of-factly, leaving her staring after him in disbelief. That evening, he returned under Yen Yu's awed gaze. Another roe deer slung over his shoulder. By then, a light snow had begun to fall. Li Yuan tossed the deer into a corner of the yard. It wouldn't spoil overnight in such cold weather. After the two of them bathed, they cuddled under the covers. Later, lying comfortably in his arms, Yen Yu whispered her nightly musings. Li Yuan Fenger came by to apologize today. She said she shouldn't have spoken about you like that the other day, and I ran into a lot of people who suddenly seemed eager to chat. But I only really talked to Auntie Wang. I told her you've got venison to sell, and she said she'd ask her husband to check with the restaurant in town tomorrow. If they'll buy, we'll get a much better price than selling it to the grain merchants. Li Yuan nodded. That's fine by me. Let Uncle Wang see if they're interested. Either way, I've got to sell this roe deer tomorrow or it won't be fresh. It snowed all through the night. By morning, the snowdrifts were knee-deep. Yen Yu stood at the door, helping support the weight of the roe deer on Li Yuan's back. She breathed out a cloud of white steam. Come home soon, all right? He nodded, bow slung over one shoulder and deer over the other, trudging off through the thick snow with heavy but determined steps. The world outside was blanketed in white, pure and still. Hardly anyone was out and about, and the usual bustle had faded into quiet. Li Yuan slung his bag over his shoulder and trudged through the snow to the grain store. He hadn't paid much attention before, but now he noticed the sign read Four Rivers Trading. As he stepped inside, he found the place in a bit of a commotion. Who knew what had happened? A man blocked his way. What do you want? I'm here to sell meat. Are you buying? Open it up, the man said. Li Yuan set down his sack and opened it. The man peered inside and saw a whole roe deer. His brow furrowed, and after a moment of thought, he asked, You're Li Yuan, right? That's me. A grin spread over the man's face. Heh, you've certainly made a name for yourself these past few days. Li Yuan gave a helpless smile. Just doing what I can to hang on to my catch and feed my family. Sizing up Li Yuan's broad frame, the man introduced himself. I'm Zhao Feng, in charge of this grain store. Li Yuan glanced over him and noticed that, above Zhao Feng's head, he seemed to measure 2'3". Clearly someone who hadn't officially ranked up but was already stronger than your average person. It's a pleasure to meet you, Li Yuan said politely. I'll give you the county rate for your roe deer, Zhao Feng said. No funny business. Thank you. I appreciate it. Zhao Feng called for someone in the back, and a worker came to weigh the deer. Meanwhile, Zhao Feng turned back to Li Yuan. I hear you're quite the fighter, especially with a bow. Interested in joining Four Rivers Trading? Seeing Li Yuan about to speak, Zhao Feng lifted a hand. Let me finish first. He smacked his lips, paced a few steps with his hands behind his back, then stopped and fixed his gaze on Li Yuan. I'll be frank. In a few days, we'll be pulling out of Gemhill County. Why? Li Yuan asked, curious. Lowering his voice, Zhao Feng said, The Red Lotus rebels have risen up. Gemhill County is way too close to the danger zone, so we have to withdraw. The guild is recruiting strong fighters to travel with us. Interested in coming along? Li Yuan hesitated. By the time someone brought out his payment for the deer, he finally replied, Let me think it over at home. He really didn't want to commit right away. He barely knew Zhao Feng. They'd only just met. Could he really be trusted? Besides, in these chaotic times, working as a guard for a merchant guild could be risky. The guild would be constantly on the move, and roving bandits or even the Red Lotus rebels were sure to target them. "All right," Zhao Feng said. "If you make up your mind within 3 days, come back here and let me know." The roe deer weighed in at 15 kilograms, and the people from 4 Rivers Trading handed Li Yuan 36 large copper coins for it. Right there on the spot, he spent 13 large coins on 15 kilograms of millet and 5 kilograms of beans, packing them into 2 separate bags. Then he used another 5 coins to buy 500 grams of salt. Another 5 went toward a small bag of sugar crystals and some candles. That left him with 13 coins remaining. In these times, salt and sugar were luxuries. Being able to bring so much back home was enough to make Li Yuan feel quite satisfied. Meanwhile, Zhao Feng, watching him stock up on provisions, couldn't help but look displeased. Clearly, Li Yuan was planning to stay put rather than accompany him. After some hesitation, Zhao Feng spotted Li Yuan's figure receding into the snowy distance and dashed out to catch him. "Wait, wait!" he called, trudging through the drifts. Li Yuan stopped politely. "What is it?" Zhao Feng said. "Li Yuan, let me be straight with you. If you join 4 Rivers Trading, you'll be following me under the 3rd Mrs. leadership. She's been suppressed by others in the guild, but she's got real talent. She's bound to climb up the ranks sooner or later. If you follow her now, once she truly takes over, you'll be one of the main contributors. You'll reap plenty of benefits." Those words only confirmed Li Yuan's misgivings. Sure enough, any sizable faction had internal cliques, each vying for power. With the chaos outside, they were still locked in their own infighting. And Zhao Feng, who wasn't even officially ranked, likely had little clout in the guild anyway. If he did, he wouldn't be stuck selling grain in a tiny village like this. "Thank you. Once I'm home, I'll think it over carefully. If I decide to join 4 Rivers within 3 days, I'll come find you here, right?" "That's right," Zhao Feng said. "I'll be waiting for the good news." Li Yuan nodded and headed off again with his bags of supplies. Snow fell thick and fast, whiting out the landscape. In the endless expanse of white, there weren't many footprints or signs of life. Step by heavy step, Li Yuan made his way back to the small house, finally reaching the eaves. He dropped his sack and brushed off the clumps of snow. Yenyu, who had been listening for his return, opened the door and burst into laughter when she saw him covered in white. "You look like a little old man." She turned to fetch hot water so he could wash up, but only took 2 steps before he reached out and seized her hand. With a tug, Yenyu let out a startled cry, spinning out from the doorway in a swirl of her blue blouse. Li Yuan pulled her into his arms and twirled her around in the snow. They made several turns before stopping. Yenyu, far from protesting, simply tightened her arms around his waist. He held her close, and there they stood, pressed together under the falling snow. Knee-deep drifts blanketed the courtyard, and goose-feather flakes still cascaded from the sky. Before long, both their hair and lashes were frosted pure white. Yenyu giggled. "What's this all about?" Li Yuan brushed a bit of snow from her hair. "Your hair's turned white too." She arched an eyebrow playfully. "Well, maybe it's a good omen. Maybe heaven is telling us we'll grow old together." Growing old together. What a fairy tale dream in times like these. Li Yuan suddenly remembered his own eternal youth and went quiet for a moment. Then he hugged his wife tighter. "I bought you some sugar." "Sugar?" Yenyu's face lit up with delight. Scooping her into his arms, Li Yuan carried her back inside. That night, they lay side by side, exchanging quiet words before sleep. "When I went to 4 Rivers Trading, I heard they'll be pulling out in 3 days. What's going on?" "They said the Red Lotus rebels have risen up." "Red Lotus rebels? Don't you mean the Red Lotus cult?" "I've heard a little about them. Can't remember who told me." "Red Lotus cult?" Li Yuan dug around in his memories but came up blank. The former Li Yuan also hadn't had much contact with outside news. Yenyu explained, "There's been famine and disasters down south, and that's when the Red Lotus cult stepped in. Rumor says their cult leader can turn rune water into food. If you drink just one bowl, you won't feel hungry for the whole day. Desperate refugees flocked to him and even set up altars with his image at home, worshipping him like a living god. A single bowl that keeps you full all day? Li Yuan let out a cold laugh. But then a more pressing concern struck him. If the Red Lotus rebels really do sweep through, the local authorities might start conscripting soldiers. That could be an issue. I'll be forced to go fight. He fell silent, torn. Should we leave with Zhao Feng? No, life on the road as a merchant guard in these chaotic times is hardly safer either. We'd be wandering around with the perfect target on our backs. Merchant caravans drew outlaws and rebels alike, all hungry for plunder. Eventually, Li Yuan spoke up, voice serious. Yan Yu, I need to tell you something. What is it? She asked, surprised by his tone. He leaned in and whispered by her ear. If we hear word that the Red Lotus rebels are coming for the county seat, I'll hide out in the mountains for a while, then sneak back at night. Ha! It took her a moment to process, and then she lowered her voice. Won't that be dangerous? And are you sure you'll be safe in the mountains? Li Yuan shook his head. They won't find me. Time slipped by. 3 days later, Zhao Feng never saw Li Yuan and never showed up at his door. He simply left the village with his people. Li Yuan carried on hunting as usual. Meanwhile, Uncle Wang had indeed found an opportunity through the local restaurant. That newly opened channel meant Li Yuan now had a direct buyer for his game, and the restaurant was happy to purchase fresh meat straight from the source. Uncle Wang was an honest type, and Li Yuan's catches were in excellent condition, so the restaurant was more than willing to strike a deal. 9 days went by in a flash. During this time, Li Yuan kept a deliberately low profile in Little Ink Village. One day, he even scraped his skin with a stone, claiming he'd been attacked by a wild bear. He put on a show of terror which caused his reputation to plummet. Over the following days, he returned home later and later, catching smaller and smaller prey each time. On the 9th day, he came back empty-handed, muttering that he hadn't caught a single thing. When Bear heard the news, he threw his head back and let out a hearty laugh. Fenger, who had ended up sharing his bed, snuggled closer and crooned, Bear, you really are incredible. Li Yuan can't hold a candle to you. Bear smirked. He's not so bad. Fenger pressed him coyly. So, when are you going to marry me? Soon, soon, Bear murmured. Elsewhere, Chen Er also gave a snide laugh when he heard Li Yuan had come back empty-handed. 5 more days passed. Suddenly, all of Gemhill County seemed to erupt. Government bailiffs were racing through every street and alley, forcing men to join the military in order to fight off the incoming threat. The Red Lotus rebels are at our gates. Time to defend our homes. Don't argue. This isn't a matter of volunteering. Everyone has to go. 2 men in your household? Draw lots. One of them's coming with us. Only 1 man in the family? Then he goes, no exceptions. Move it. What's all the fuss? Don't tell me you're in league with the rebels. Let's go. All at once, people were distraught. Families torn apart. Husbands separated from wives. Children losing fathers. Heartbreak filled every corner. In Little Ink Village, Bear was dozing with Fenger in his arms when someone started pounding on the door. Who is it? He growled. Fenger snapped. Don't you know Bear's resting? Can't you read the room? Before the words were out of her mouth, bam! The door was kicked in. A bailiff took one look inside and asked, Lu Ergu, right? Bear froze. Seeing the fierce-looking bailiff, he lowered his head, avoiding Fenger's gaze. Quietly, he admitted, Yes, conscription, the bailiff snapped. Put some clothes on and come with us. Meanwhile, at the Chen residence, the gates were shoved open. Chen Er was in the midst of eating and drinking with a group of local thugs when the bailiff rushed in. Chen Er gaped. What are you? The bailiff cut him off. So this is where everyone's been hiding. Great. You're all drafted. Chen Er hastily fished out 2 pieces of silver and tried to slip them into the man's hand. I'm a good friend of Lieutenant Lu. Maybe we can work something out. But the bailiff slapped the silver aside. Lieutenant Lu isn't in charge here anymore. On your feet, move! Behind him stood an escort in plain clothes, leaning against the doorframe with a blade in his arms, watching impassively. When a few of the thugs tried to argue, the plainclothes escort sprang into action like an eagle after prey, slamming them to the floor in a matter of seconds. None of them dared fight back again. Papa! No! Don't go! Outside Auntie Wang's home, two little ones were bawling their eyes out, tears rolling down their red, frozen cheeks, looking utterly pitiful. Uncle Wang, meanwhile, had been conscripted and was trailing silently behind the bailiff. The county needed 5,000 new recruits, all taken from the poorer villages without mercy. The bailiffs showed no hesitation in dragging people off. Uncle Wang, a quiet and honest man, was holding back his grief and anger, but he didn't dare look back. Auntie Wang followed at a distance, trembling as she held out the family's meager savings to the bailiff, forcing a smile. Sir, our family depends on him. Can't you make an exception? The bailiff dismissed her with a wave. Go back, go back. Which family isn't like that? Auntie Wang struggled to keep smiling, her eyes pleading. But the children are still so young. The bailiff retorted, Isn't that what you're here for? Another bailiff snapped, Stop wasting time. Move. Auntie Wang tried again, but the other bailiff impatiently reached for the hilt of his blade and slammed a hand on it, glaring fiercely. She went pale with fright. The two little ones behind her were so terrified they stopped crying. That was when Uncle Wang turned and said, Go home. Take care of the kids. Husband. Auntie Wang knew it was hopeless. She began to cry, rubbed her eyes and choked out, Take care. Life and death could come at any moment. Who knew if they would ever see each other again? Once a man was taken to fight, it was as if he were already gone. After Uncle Wang left, Auntie Wang clutched her children and broke down in tears. One of the bailiffs headed next door, roster in hand, and shouted, Li Yuan, come out! Yen Yu hurried out, her face pale and puffy with makeup. She looked haggard with her eyes red like peaches from crying. The bailiff, uninterested in her looks, didn't bother with a second glance. Impatiently, he asked, Where's Li Yuan? Yen Yu's lips quivered. She tried to speak but only managed a strangled sob. She lowered her head, wiping away tears as muffled cries slipped out. Growing irritated, the bailiff barked, What's going on? Yen Yu took several gulping breaths, trying to contain her grief. My husband went up the mountain the day before yesterday and still hasn't come back. Suddenly, her tearful eyes lit up with hope. Bailiff, please be kind and help me look for him in the mountains. I'm begging you. The bailiff gripped the hilt of his blade and glared at her, forcing Yen Yu to stop in her tracks. He exchanged a few words with the bailiff next to him, then sneered. Maybe he ran off to the mountains to dodge the draft? Yen Yu froze in fright. No, never. 2 days ago, you weren't even here yet. How could he have known about this? The bailiff continued menacingly. Desertion is punishable by death. If you know anything and don't report it, you'll share his fate. Think carefully. Yen Yu shook her head over and over, babbling in panic. He didn't know about the draft. He really didn't. The first bailiff glanced at his partner, who nodded, then went around asking the other conscripts. He returned shortly. Seems she's telling the truth. That Li Yuan is a skilled hunter, roams the mountains on his own. Got roughed up by a bear a few days back. Tore off a big chunk of skin on his leg. It snowed the day before yesterday, and after he went up the mountain, he never came back. People say he might have died up there. The bailiff gave a curt nod, shoved Yen Yu aside, and searched her house. Finding no one, he continued on to the next home. Yen Yu collapsed to the ground, weeping. After a long moment, she propped herself up against the fence and dragged herself back inside. The instant she was in, she shut the door tightly, gently pressing the spot on her chest bound tight by cloth. She turned her head. Outside the window, the mountains lay blanketed in white. In such harsh, freezing weather, there wasn't a bird in sight. Who knew if he was still alive out there? Whoosh! Swish! Howl! The mountains looked like frozen slabs of meat, and the wind slashed like a blade, scraping away layers of snow and ice in its path. Beyond the second ridge, Li Yuan trudged forward, wrapped in a cloak made of deerskin, left arm raised to shield himself from the swirling snow, right hand gripping a cold hatchet with all his strength. Against the vast white backdrop, he kept a firm grasp on his blade as he pushed on. Thanks to the 9-10 base combat power of his body, even without proper training, he could chop down the wild boar, bear, or tiger lurking in these mountains, relying on brute strength alone. Li Yuan had powerful vitality and had already reached the level of a ranked martial artist. Coupled with the warmth of his deerskin cloak, it was possible for him to survive even in such harsh wilderness. Over the past few days, Yen Yu had been quietly gathering information about the Red Lotus rebels. When she learned they might head toward Gemhill County, Li Yuan decided without hesitation to hide in the mountains. If the rumor turned out to be false, he'd stay in hiding for a few days, then come back. If it proved true, he would avoid conscription. Sure enough, it was true. Early that morning, Li Yuan heard chaotic noises from the direction of Little Ink Village. He knew right away he'd guessed correctly. The authorities were really rounding people up to fight the rebels. Had he stayed home, they'd have dragged him off for sure. His heart, which had been pounding in his chest, finally slowed. He let out a long sigh. Yes, hiding in the mountains to dodge the draft meant risking the death penalty, but it was still better than marching off to fight with no way out. It was a close call. He glanced over his own status. Name: Li Yuan. Stat points: 145. Realm: Rank 9 Flesh Refinement. Techniques: Return Willow Technique 100 out of 100. Skills: Expert Archery 0 of 80. Advanced Tracking 0 of 40. Divine Ability: Eternal Youth. Equipment slots: Locked. He had saved up a total of 145 stat points. And ever since he and Yen Yu grew closer, he'd been earning 7 stat points every day. It had been 20 days since he last allocated any. Starting today, I have to sneak home each night. If I'm discovered, I'll have only 2 options: silence them, or run away with Yen Yu. Well then, I'd better give it everything I've got. Focusing on the plus sign next to advanced tracking, Li Yuan tapped it 40 times. With each point spent, a flood of memories filled his mind. He experienced days of relentless practice. He crawled through tall grass to track a beast, ignoring the sting of mosquitoes and the itch tormenting his body. He covered vast distances without sleep to gather intel on an enemy, only to approach with painstaking caution once he got close. Over and over, he pushed himself in real combat, reflecting on his weaknesses and fine-tuning his skills. Finally, one day, his perseverance paid off. He had a sudden moment of clarity. His tracking ability took another leap forward, entering a whole new stage. A wealth of experience flooded his mind, and subtle changes began to ripple through his muscles and nerves. His sensitivity to his surroundings sharpened, and he grew even better at concealing his presence. Advanced Tracking, 0/40. New. Expert Tracking, 0 out of 80. Li Yuan glanced at his status window. He still had 105 stat points remaining. After thinking it over, he decided to spend them all at once. After all, no one could be allowed to discover that he returned to the village in secret each night. Maybe he could hide for 1 or 2 evenings, but if this dragged on, could he really keep it up? It's still not enough. If anything goes wrong, it'll be too late for regrets. I have to be absolutely sure. Let's keep going. Li Yuan once again tapped the plus sign 80 times in a row. A new set of memories poured into his head. He'd already been an expert in tracking, but no matter how hard he tried on his own, he couldn't break through any further. He'd heard rumors of even more advanced forms of tracking, but that was supposedly beyond the reach of a mere novice martial warrior like him. Yet one day, fortune smiled upon him. An old man whose face seemed shrouded in mist offered him a few words of guidance. In that instant, Li Yuan understood. His long-stalled bottleneck finally gave way. He broke through. He grew stronger. He could now track beasts and enemies with ease and slip into every home in the village unnoticed. He was practically invisible, adept at every trick for hiding movement and masking his aura. Li Yuan glanced over his own stats again. His overall combat strength remained the same, clearly because it only measured fighting ability, while tracking was more of a soft skill. Still, his status screen had changed. His tracking skill was now at the master level. Name: Li Yuan. Stat points: 25. Realm: Rank 9 Flesh Refinement. Techniques: Return Willow Technique 100 out of 100. Skills: Expert Archery 0 of 80. New: Master Tracking 0 of 160. Divine Ability: Eternal Youth. Equipment slots: Locked. Night fell. The massive draft roundup had finally ended. Some families wailed, some families mourned. There were gray-haired parents sending off their children, couples torn apart by tragedy. All of Little Ink Village sank into a heavy silence. Yen Yu blew out the candles early and stood guard by the back door, peeking outside from time to time, her heart full of worry and hope. Her eyes were puffy and red, not just for show. The entire village was in mourning. Who wouldn't be broken-hearted under such circumstances? Around midnight, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared at the back door. A hand rose and knocked 6 times in a pattern of light, light, heavy, heavy, light, and heavy. Yen Yu leaned in, and a voice came from outside. "It's me." She recognized it immediately and, overjoyed, rushed to open the door. She pulled the man in with a tight embrace, her hands roaming restlessly as if starved for his touch. Only after a good while did the commotion in the room settle. Li Yuan said quietly, "Aren't you bothered by the smell?" "I don't smell anything," Yen Yu answered softly, her voice gentle and weak, but she held on to him as though letting go would mean losing him forever. After a light sigh, she finally let go and murmured, "I'll get some water ready so you can wash up." "Better not. If the neighbors see smoke, they might get suspicious," Li Yuan replied. "Besides, I already washed in a mountain spring. But I could use a bit of soap and a change of clothes for when I head back." "A mountain spring?" Yen Yu's eyes widened in disbelief. "In this weather? Aren't you afraid you'll freeze to death?" Li Yuan laughed. "Your man's as tough as an ox. There's no freezing me." She rolled her eyes and pinched his arm playfully, pouting, "No wonder you have so much stamina." Then she sighed and rested her head on his chest, whispering, "So many men have been taken away. Uncle Wang, Chen Er, Bear, even that Xiao Hu. Almost all the able-bodied men in the village are gone." "Li Yuan, do you think they'll survive fighting the Red Lotus rebels and come back home?" Li Yuan was silent for a long moment. Before crossing over to this world, he hadn't studied much history, but he had at least watched enough historical dramas to know that peasant uprisings often marked the beginning of chaotic times. He thought of Chunshang and Wu Guang, the Yellow Turbans, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. When the world truly descended into chaos, order would collapse, and human life became as worthless as weeds. Right now, hearing about people starving or selling their children in this village might sound shocking, but in the grander scheme of things, it was just a small taste of what was to come. By then, the world would no longer be for the living. It would be hell on earth. "Li Yuan," Yen Yu said softly, "do you really think none of them will make it back? I mean, Chen Er is one thing, but there are so many good men in the village. Are they all just going to die?" Li Yuan felt a heaviness in his chest. He thought to himself, maybe once things settle down, I can save up enough silver and move us somewhere near Silver Creek. Maybe life would be better there. Or maybe we should retreat deep into the mountains, and I'll carve out a peaceful haven for us, far away from the chaos. He hugged his wife close and tried to console her. Whether they live or die isn't up to us. It's all in the hands of fate. Yen Yu choked up, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank goodness you didn't go. Thank goodness. Promise me you'll take care of yourself up in the mountains. If it's too risky to come back at night, don't force it." Li Yuan nodded. "I know. Listen, stash our grain in a safe place. Only bring out a little at a time so no one realizes how much we have. And if you see someone so desperate you feel like giving them some grain, think carefully. You could end up bringing trouble on yourself." Yan Yu closed her eyes and pressed her cheek to his chest. "Your wife isn't foolish," she murmured. In the early hours before dawn, Li Yuan slipped out of bed, gathered his pack, quietly opened the back door, and vanished into the mist like a ghost. It weighed on him that he couldn't stay in his own home, forced instead to hide in the wilderness. But there was no alternative. He made his way back up the mountain, heading deeper into the second ridge, where he found a cave beside a spring and settled in. Not long after, the sun rose, bathing the slopes in golden light. Carrying his old clothes and a bit of soap, he washed his laundry by the spring. Spotting a few 01s in the water, some fish it seemed, he deftly stabbed at them with an arrow. A quick pull later, a fish was flopping in his hand. He spread his wet clothes over a rock outside the cave, laying them flat to dry in the sun. By day's end, they'd be mostly done. Finally, he gathered firewood along the way, lit a small campfire at the mouth of the cave, and began roasting the fish over the open flame. After finishing his fish, Li Yuan leaned back against the rock wall, staring off into the distance. Before long, boredom set in. He briefly toyed with the idea of disguising himself and heading into town for a little fun. But that was too dangerous. If anyone recognized him, he'd be as good as dead. Still, he needed something to occupy his time. Maybe I should explore deeper into the mountains? If I find a good spot, I could bring Yan Yu here and build a refuge. We'll wait things out until the chaos passes. It would be just like the tale of the peach blossom spring. After all, those villagers once said their ancestors had fled the Qin dynasty's upheaval and stumbled upon their hidden haven. If it worked for them, why not for him? Chasing powerful cultivation techniques was tempting, but if they required gambling his life or taking insane risks, was it really worth it? If he stayed hidden long enough, his daily stat points would accumulate, allowing him to boost any skill to mastery the moment he emerged. That beat living in constant fear. Enthusiasm sparked in his chest, and his heart thumped. "All right," Li Yuan muttered, jumping to his feet and clenching his fists. "Let's head deeper into Little Ink Mountain today." He grabbed his bow and hatchet and began trekking north. He knew this area fairly well, at least up to the narrow pass ahead. But now he planned to push through that pass and see what the third ridge looked like beyond the second ridge. By midday, he stumbled through the pass into an expanse of wild forest, all drab yellows and browns. Come spring or summer, it might look completely different. "Not a single trail," Li Yuan grumbled, hacking away at dangling vines and overgrown branches with his hatchet. He could see nothing but more trees and more scrub ahead, no end in sight. As he pressed on, faint numbers like 0, 1 or 1, 2 flickered in his peripheral vision more often than they had in the second ridge, likely representing small wildlife. "Well, at least there's no shortage of meat here," Li Yuan mused. "If I plant some vegetables later, we'd be set. But this is still too close to the outside. I should keep going and scout farther in." Time slipped into the evening before he finally decided to head back. He'd spent the entire afternoon on the move, scouting the area. Thanks to his improved tracking and his ability to gauge combat power, he avoided any run-ins with dangerous beasts. As long as he didn't provoke them, they left him alone. By sunset, the sky was blood red, and a strange, bone-chilling wind cut through the mountains like a knife. Li Yuan picked up his pace, half running, half walking back to his cave. The moon was already high by the time he returned, bathing the land in silvery light. He lit a campfire, then hurried to the nearby spring for a quick, teeth-chattering rinse, snatching a few fish from the water while he was at it. Afterward, he slipped back into the clothes he'd dried earlier and perched on a large rock, roasting fish over the flames. As he waited, he mentally reviewed the terrain he'd seen in the third ridge that day. "So far, I haven't found a suitable spot," he thought. "Tomorrow I'll set out earlier and push deeper. That might lead me somewhere better." Just then, Li Yuan felt a sudden gust of foul wind sweeping in from afar. Instinct took over. His left hand flipped up, grabbing his crude bow, while his right hand dropped the half-roasted fish and snatched an arrow from its quiver. He drew back the bowstring in one smooth motion, the firelight catching the arrow's tip as it pointed toward the edge of the illuminated clearing. Eyes narrowed, Li Yuan peered into the darkness. That was when he saw it, a flickering 5-8 approaching. Out of the night emerged the outline of a white forehead tiger, slinking across the ground. It had been charging forward at full speed, but upon nearing the firelight, it suddenly halted and slowly backed up a few steps before flattening itself against the ground. Li Yuan almost loosed his arrow right then, but something made him hesitate. He nudged the roasted fish with the tip of his boot, sending it flying through the air to land near the fire's perimeter. The tiger stayed where it was, not moving a muscle. Li Yuan lowered his bow slightly and softened his breathing. Then the tiger rose, padded forward a few paces, seized the fish in its jaws, and wheeled around to dash back into the darkness. Thanks for watching the video all the way to this point. If you enjoyed the story and want to see what happens next, leave a comment so I know you're liking it, and I'll bring you the continuation.